She walks in loud like a thunderstorm, debunking myths with style and form. True crime, conspiracies, her game. Melissa Jade, remember her name. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Microphone fierce like a roaring lion, unveiling secrets people been hiding. True crime queen of the digital scene, Melissa's got you hooked on her screen. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Murders to cover-ups, nothing misses. Melissa's here to share her guesses. She's got theories big and bold, no stone unturned, no case cold. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. From murders to cover-ups, nothing misses. Melissa's here to share her guesses. She's got theories big and bold, no stone unturned, no case cold. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. 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 She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Shavani.
Melissa, hey everybody.
What's cooking? Good looking?
Happy Sunday.
Dude, we only lost an hour, and now granted it's been like a jam-packed day, but I'm so exhausted. I'm so exhausted.
Are you?
Yeah, it feels like it's fall hours too much in the future right now.
It does take time to adjust to daylight
But it's only an
savings.
hour, so like why? I don't know, but it messes with you, man.
It does. It does.
Hi, Clicker. Hi, Katrina. Jennifer Heinehole. I made it and I can stay. Hey, I love it. Welcome, Jennifer. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Hi, Katrina. I like Saturdays. I don't like Sundays. I like Saturdays. Was the intro? No, wait, was the intro choppy? I did the whole screen. Well, given that we're 3 minutes and 37 seconds in, I could take my sweet ass time, respectfully, Island Life. All I did was play the intro, but no, not going to start talking about the case because I do my missing child segment in the beginning, and then I'll start talking about the case. So if you want to go for 4 minutes, come back, whatever. But that's a bit rude, especially for an account I've never seen before. Thank you, Wolfie, for 39 months. Yay, love you, fart, love you too. That's awesome. What you doing, Gavel Geeks?
Hey, Gavel.
Okay, bye. Okay, hi everyone. So, before I pull up our usual missing child for the live stream, I would like to pull up again. We have the friend of our channel and their loved one is still missing. So this is Jordan Yust, missing from Olathe, Kansas since March 3rd. He is 5'7", 175 pounds. He is bald, but with brown eyes. He is 37 years old. He went missing on March 3rd at approximately 11 a.m. He was last seen driving a silver Hyundai Odyssey. He is enlisted as endangered due to statements of self-harm. So He was last seen wearing a green Columbia coat and blue jeans. If you have any information regarding Jordan's disappearance or you know of his whereabouts, please contact Olathe, Kansas Police Department at 913-971-6363 or the TIPS hotline at 816-474-8477 or the KBI Kansas Bureau of Investigation at 785-296-4017. So this is Jordan, and we're hoping that they'll definitely find him soon. There's been a Facebook group that's been opened with a few thousand members already, which is absolutely amazing. So we're just
That's
hoping.
awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of missing people, did you hear over the weekend that according to the family of Tyler Goodrich, they found his remains?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they're getting closure. I guess they're supposed to have an autopsy on Monday.
Yeah. Well, and then we also had that missing child who from Colorado who made his way. He made his way home. And they've got leads, but nothing solid. Prayers, Jessica. I really hope that they find him soon. Okay. And so then here is our official missing child for tonight's live stream. This is Zayla Walker. Look at her. Look at this cutie patootie. I love her bow. She has been missing since August 23rd, 2018 out of North Las Vegas, Nevada. She is 9 years old. We're going to have another photo of her that's shown, and she was last seen August 23rd, 2018, and she may have traveled to the state of Texas. So here we have, oh, look at that. Look at her. How precious is she? So if you are, she's so cute. If you or anyone who knows information on her whereabouts, please contact the North Vegas Police Department at 1-702-633-9111. Thank you, Brittany K, for fall months. Hello, beautiful ladies. Best channel ever. Thank you. And thank you, Midnight Lace. That's very kind of you. Welcome to all of our new members. We have Monday tomorrow. Very excited. And Patreon tomorrow. Sorry, I've been kind of MIA the past week. Life. That's all I'll say. One word. Life. Does he, Harley? Yeah, definitely keep an eye out. Oh, you're so sweet, Midnight Lace. Okay. So now we're going to officially get into my deepest apologies, Legendary. How are you?
Yo, CEO.
Now we're officially going to get into the case. So is all I have to say. I've been trying to digest. I've been trying to digest this. There's so much I don't even know. I watched the interview with Steve Goncalves. Steve Goncalves.
You're talking about the prank statement?
Say that again?
You're talking about the statement about like where he said the girls would make pranks and do pranks and stuff?
He wants to reiterate that's what hi Meat Feeds. He wants to reiterate that these were young adults who the lifestyle that they are living is where they would prank each other often, that Kaylee would even pull a lot of pranks, and they were drinking and there were people in and out of that house. So just kind of allow a little bit of room there. Not saying that you can't have your opinions, but if anyone should be questioning something, I would assume it's the families, right? And they're kind of like, yo, what these young adults have gone through, he was sympathizing with their parents and the fact that their parents have their kids who are also victims and going through their own struggles. And, you know, it was just nice to hear his perspective of stuff. What are your thoughts, Shay?
No, I agree. I had listened to like the full interview. I didn't realize that Court TV was playing that segment whenever you share the clip. But yeah, I sympathize. Like I think he was a lot more understanding of the state of mind they may have been in. I also think that he brought up some good points that, they've been promised that the prosecution, would be working with the families closer and, maybe having a victim's advocate reach out to them when something that's like real sensitive may be, on the brinks and give them a heads up could be helpful. But we're at the part where we're about to head into trial. So I don't really know like what that really kind of measure would look like. But I did feel for him, and what he was saying is like, I'm sure that as the victims' families are reading the court documents and things that are coming out real time as we are, they're having to kind of keep reliving that grief.
Right.
And then I also look at that impact for like the Chapin's family, where, they had two of the triplets that were also on scene too in their own experiences. And I'm sure that's a lot to handle as well.
Yeah. Hi, Chris, and happy belated birthday. Hi, Neat.
Hey guys. What did you think about that? I was curious. With just kind of wanting like a little bit more of a heads up when some sensitive stuff like that would come out for the families.
In an ideal world, see, I don't want this to come out wrong. I don't want to sit there and say, like, oh, I wish that they don't get a heads up, versus there was a demand and a demand and demand for things to come out. And now that they're coming out, we're also saying, well, hey, give me a heads up when they're coming out. And I get that it's coming out a lot all at once. But I think that a lot with this case unfolded very messy, and maybe it's being handled differently than it would in different circumstances. And so, yeah, of course, it would be nice to give a heads up, but it's going to move very fast from here on out. And this is going to continue to happen. Right, exactly, Harlot. It would be nice, but it doesn't seem realistic at this point. It's just going to keep. We're approaching the verge of trial now, and we're talking about how many terabytes? 58 terabytes of all, like, so much is coming out.
Right. But I think Meat Feeds brings up a good point. It may just seem different because it is so publicized. It's like everywhere they turn, like it's being talked about, probably.
That's true. And there's an overwhelming amount of information we're dealing with. Hi, Tasha. There's an overwhelming amount of motions and documents, and there's just a lot. But this is what we would anticipate seeing, and I don't think it's realistic to give them a heads up every time, because as you can see, shit gets dropped. I don't know who makes the call of when exactly it gets posted publicly available on the docket. Like it comes out in batches at all different times.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, they should just be prepared for anything to come out at any point now.
Agree.
But okay. So the live before last, we went through all of the defense's motion of limines. And so I know that we were planning on doing the state's responses to those limines. And the last live, we had new motions that were unsealed regarding the 911 call transcripts and the text messages. I think it was Jules. I saw something interesting I just wanted to talk to you guys about before we pull up whichever one we're going to go with. But I saw her mention that someone had said bro, that bro text may have stood for be right over. I've never heard bro be used like that. But again, I'm not hip with today's lingo. Does anyone think that that's a possibility? Like, bro stood for be right over.
Yeah, I saw that in your comments too on I think the last live, and I was like, that's pretty interesting.
And to know he did go over,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I thought that was it. I was like, oh, I've never looked at it like that. Neither did I, Jennifer. Bro, the second one.
Yeah, but I think it was all little letters or all
all lowercase.
little
All little
letters.
Here, I have it right here, but it was all little letters.
Just tiny letters. Clicker AK just gifted 5 memberships.
Thank you, Clicker. That's very kind of you. Welcome, welcome, all of our new members. Please make sure you thank Clicker if you got a membership. Okay, is it what? Yeah, it looks blank. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so we have. It starts. Where does it start? Here. Okay, so. All right,
can I tell you something I'm noticing as well that's happening? Mm-hmm. Is that some people are just taking the dialogue and reading it, and they're not prefacing it with what is above it, that it's actually Xana that was the one that was called in, because there's more context given, and I'm finding that's also causing a little bit of chaos around the streets.
So say that again, like what specifically?
That the text messages in some, like maybe just YouTube content creators and other platforms, are presenting it just as the text, and they're not providing the context above, because they're wondering how they figured out it was Xana, like that they were calling about with being the unconscious person and the age. God. And so I just think, for everyone out there, context is important. So just read the whole documents. We're trying to read over all of them, so we have it.
Right. We're not skipping a line through these documents. And I get that some of, even though I think all of it, for the most part, 90% of it's very interesting, 10% I could understand. Okay, a little repetitive, a little fluff, but you have to read line for line. Like if you're going to cover this case or you're going to put your input on, because I stopped at 2 lives already where I've heard, oh man, you didn't read it and you're running with shit you've either heard or pieces you want to pick out. You can't do that. Like you need to absorb all of it and take it for what it is. Every fucking line is so important. You can't just take one line of it and run with it to make it what you want it to be. Oh, yay, Bum Cigarette. Thank you and welcome. Hi, Shabazz. So here, we could just real quickly just read this little section again. So it says, Dylan's phone records for the 13th and Bethany's testimony. And it's saying that it should be allowed at trial. So on the 13th, 2:10 a.m., Dylan sends a text message to EG, which is the Uber driver. Now, I do have a question about this. So she sends a text to the Uber driver to inquire if he was driving. Did she know he would be picking them up? Do you think, because or else what's likelihood that she would have texted him on this same night at that time?
I just thought that they could just be friends.
I'd have to have wondering if he was out there. It stood out to me when I read over it for the first time, but I had so much overload with information that I was like, I'll circle back to that. But if she knew specifically the Uber driver was picking up Kaylee and Maddie, and the time too, look at 2:10 a.m. That would make a little bit more sense, but I guess we don't know yet because we don't have the full context, and people need to remember that too. Don't have we're just getting a very little bit that has to be included to make their arguments and to file their motions in limine. We're missing a lot of context. But Dylan sends a text to EG, the Uber driver, to inquire if he's driving. So let's see. So Dylan was awake and texting at 2:10 a.m. From 4:19 a.m. to 4:21 a.m., Dylan attempts to call Bethany, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie, all of the roommates, okay, the female roommates. All calls are unanswered. The record of these calls are not hearsay, okay. Now we have to assume, I'm making an assumption here, because all of the calls were unanswered, but then at 4:22, so just 18 seconds later, This text message exchange occurs between, wait a second, Shay. It's only 18 seconds later. But this text message exchange occurs between Dylan and Bethany. But as you can see, it's like they already spoke because they're already speaking. How did they do that in 18 seconds? Because originally when I read it, I'm like, all right, Bethany probably called Dylan back and they spoke briefly. But now I'm looking at that again. It's 18 seconds.
So this is what I took from it. I took that these are going to come in because we're looking at data, okay? So what that hearsay that, and how those are introduced would be through them being as witnesses on the stand. And my opinion was that they would when they take to the stand, they'll be able to fill in the gaps. Say it's Dylan. I called Bethany. I told her this. And then these text messages coincide with that, but it's data as it's hearsay. So I think that when people say like there's missing context there, I think it's because we're going to hear more from the witnesses themselves. Do you know what I mean? Because that wouldn't be hearsay. That's from their own experience of what happened.
Right. But I'm just going by what still, even with context, okay, 4:19, 4:21, the car is seen speeding off at 4:20 a.m. So she starts calling as this person left, okay? Then 18 seconds later, okay, because we have 4:21:50 and then 4:22:08, Dylan to Bethany. No one is answering. I'm really confused. Dylan to Kaylee, what's going on? So Bethany to Dylan, yeah, dude, what the fuck? Xana was wearing all black, so there had to have been some, unless they're not including a phone call, like this is, it's still a short period of time, but unless Bethany called Dylan back, either way, she knew details already. That's all I'm saying.
Right, which would make sense because I think that their testimony would fill in that gap of that phone call. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just focusing on the time specifically.
Right.
I'm like, damn, that would mean we're talking about, like a 10-second call. And it's very quick. It would be very, very quick. Maybe a voicemail. That's a good suggestion, Chris. Maybe it was a voicemail.
Or audio message.
Maybe. All I know is I'm looking at the times and all right, nobody answered. But all I know for a fact is at this point, there had to have been some type of prior communication because Bethany already knew what she was talking about. Okay, so welcome Trey214. Thanks for becoming a member. Xana was wearing all black. Possibly, like, hey, maybe it was Xana. Dylan says, I'm freaking out right now. No, it's like a ski mask almost. Bethany, shut the fuck up. Actually, Dylan, like he had something over his forehead and a little on his mouth. Like she's very intoxicated, you could tell. I'm not kidding. I am so freaked out. Now Bethany's saying, so am I. Dylan, my phone is going to die. Fuck. Bethany, come to my room. Run down here. So 4:24:39. Again, this is all in a very short time frame. I don't believe Dylan left her room at this point. She tries for the first time to call Ethan's phone. He doesn't answer. Then Dylan and Bethany continue to text. At 4:24, Dylan texts Bethany, I'm scared though. And Bethany responds, yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone. She's scared to leave her room, and she's scared to go down to Bethany's room. 4:27, Dylan again tries to call Kaylee. 4:28:44, Dylan calls Xana, not answered. 4:32:57, Dylan sends a text to Kaylee, please answer. Dylan to Kaylee, please answer. Dylan to Maddie, are you up? Dylan to Kaylee, are you up at 10:23 a.m.? So she had already gone down to Bethany's room, fallen asleep, and now they're waking up the next morning and trying again. Now, all of Bethany's messages aren't included.
Uh-oh.
So this is what's interesting to me also. 11:39:09 a.m., Dylan has a text exchange with her father. 11:50, Dylan receives a text from Jay stating bro. Dylan calls Emily at 11:50, 58, 3 seconds later. Then Dylan receives another text from Jay at 11:51:01. And then a vandal alert goes off at 1:04:01. Hold on. In the 911 transcript, is Jay Jack?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think she called Jack. That's why Jack started walking down there. Remember that picture we see of him walking down there?
At noon.
Right. So I think he started walking down there. And they took him pretty quickly, according to what we've heard from the Goncalves family,
Yeah, but
to
the
the
police were
station.
already there by the
Right.
time Jack got there.
Right.
Okay. So bro, and then another text that they didn't include at 11:51.
Which I don't think it's weird she would call Jack, because she's thinking, like, did you come see
No.
Kaylee, you know?
No, I just originally, I think we read that as Hunter Johnson, but no, because in this one, the 911 transcript, he's marked as HJ, not just J.
Oh.
Let me see. HJ, see?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they would be consistent with the letters. And that would make more sense, honestly, because I didn't like the bro, but I didn't understand, when I say I don't like it, that just means I just didn't like thinking, oh, someone could be finding the bodies and then saying that, but that I didn't know if that was to be true. But if it was Jack, okay, makes a little bit more sense, because we know he would have just been getting up and eventually walking over like in 10 minutes from now.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Johnson located the unresponsive body of Xana and informed Bethany and Dylan to call 911. Emily was present at the time. So the statements relate to Xana being passed out and not waking up. The declarations were made immediately after Hunter Johnson discovered Xana's body. So then you have the 911 dispatch. Which I believe it starts off with Bethany. Hi, something is happening here. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. They're asking what the address is. Then it is handed off to what I believe is Emily. I'll talk to you guys where we live at the right. So we're right next to them. They give the address, the phone number. Okay, tell me what's going on. Go ahead.
Say, and those dots, there's more information provided there. So we weren't given that. This is redacted.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hi, everybody who just came in. Sorry, I'm on a different screen, but welcome. So, no, we saw ... Oh, and well, this is, I think, someone like talking in the background. No, we saw, oh yeah, they saw someone in their house last night. Yeah. Are you with the patient? I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around. And then I think Bethany or me. No, it would be Bethany because it's the same letter. So it would be, can I just tell you what happened pretty much? I don't really know if someone's passed out, right? But pretty much at 4 a.m. And then the dispatcher's like, I need to know what's going on if someone's passed out. And then she's like, yeah, I'll come. Come on, we got to go check, but we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? She's not waking up. And then you have Hunter.
But I think where it says, yeah, it's Evid. I wondered if that is actually Ethan.
Yeah, maybe. That's what we thought when we read it the first time.
Right.
So, Hunter, okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone. Is she breathing? Hello. Is she breathing? No. Okay. I need you to talking to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them. Okay, hello, Bethany. I already have the ambulance. Is there a defibrillator? The patient is not conscious, not breathing. So she says, we don't have one. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, that's because the officers came at that point. So then they said, I think we have a homicide. I don't think so, Jennifer. I don't recall anything about blackout curtains.
I think that this is my interpretation after having some time to think about it. I think when Hunter passed the phone not wanting to talk I think Hunter was in shock. I think that could be why there's not explanation of what we would be expecting to say, oh, there's blood, there's this, there's that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably was in shock.
Maybe. There's a good chance.
Like, what did I just see?
Now, this one, and this is a new one, but I want to start with it because I thought it was interesting. So this is a motion to modify a no contact order, okay? And it says the state of Idaho by and through Leda County prosecuting attorney moves this court for a modification to the no contact order previously filed herein, prohibiting Kohberger from having any contact with the father of one of the victims. This motion is based on the fact that the father has requested the addition of his wife and stepdaughter to the no contact order. The state has contacted Ann Taylor, and she does not have an objection to amending the no contact order to include the wife and stepdaughter. Now, this is believed to be Xana's father. Does that mean Kohberger was attempting to contact them?
I believe that's Xana's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, who else has the wife and stepdaughter?
Well, what about Ben Mogen?
I don't know. I've heard Xana. I don't know. I didn't put any pieces together yet. What are your thoughts? Did you see this?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts with it?
Not much. I mean, just protecting the family like they did the other. They already had these orders in place for the families and it's extended. So I would presume that, they just extended it to a new wife and stepchild, or possibly.
See, I don't see them modifying this unless there was a need to modify it. If I go in and I get a damn order, right? In order to extend it to additional family, there would have to be reason.
I mean, Ben is remarried. So,
Does he have a stepdaughter?
I don't know. I just didn't dig into that. I don't know. But I don't think it's like anything weird. I think sometimes like some of these are pretty standard and what they make sense in, and I think sometimes certain documents get a bit inflated. And I don't know if that's the case with this one. Like what makes this one like interesting to you, or
Modifying it. Not the fact that there's a no contact order that I anticipate. Why modify it now? When was this contact order put in place? I would expect more early on.
they were put it early on, yes. I've
So
actually read through those.
why would there be a need to modify that now?
Maybe people started, well, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't done in the beginning and now they were correcting it. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I don't anticipate Bryan to have contacted anyone, and that's going based off the limited information I actually have on Bryan, right? So my opinion is formed by the little bit that I have. I don't see him doing something like that. But again, I don't freaking know the guy. But I'm just curious, why now? Is it because, yeah, like you said, all of this is coming out very quickly? And so this is dated March 6th. Okay. But wouldn't you anticipate Anne to kind of, she fights everything.
Well, why would she fight that? There's other orders in place for other families. It's not really something to fight. She's not going to fight everything. There are things they agree upon. It's usually the stuff that they're fighting that people are the most intrigued in discussing, like the controversial, pieces of the case. That's just my opinion on it.
I don't know. I think it's strange timing. See, and I can say that while also saying I can't imagine him reaching out, but I'm like, well, then why now? Why on this 6th day of March, years later? Didn't feel a need to extend it then. Why now? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I don't know either. All right. Let's see. Where should we go next? Is there anything specific you want me to go for? Do you want me to just kind of go state responses? Like, what do you want?
Well, for the state's motions in limine?
Yeah, whatever. We have all of it. We have to get to all of it eventually, so it doesn't really matter.
Is it? I don't. Hold on, sorry. I would say that let's start at or it says state's motion in limine regarding the neuropsychological and psychiatric evidence. That's going to be down further because they started theirs before the defense. Because these are just their own ones, yeah.
So if you guys remember, again, on episode 6, we went through all of the defense's motions in limine. And so now we're going to hear the state's side of things to all of those motions.
There
So,
is that one document that came out the same day that the 911 calls and texts came out.
Mhm.
And I want to go over that one in addition to this. The hearsay evidence that they're going to use to produce for the timeline from certain locations. I mentioned it in text. I know you're catching up, but I thought it was kind of interesting to see like what those pieces of evidence are, because there's certain like big addresses of video that we know that they've said that they had in the PCA that aren't included, and I have thoughts of probably why that may be, left out of that, and I'm just want to get your thoughts on some of those places too.
absolutely.
Okay.
But okay, you want to read this?
Sure. Okay, so this is the state's motion to eliminate regarding the neuropsychological and psychiatric evidence. Comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney and respectfully moves the court for an order in limine prohibiting defendant Kohberger from offering testimony regarding neuropsychological evaluation and psychiatric evaluation of the defendant, as summarized in the defendant's January 23rd, 2025 supplemental response to request for discovery regarding expert witnesses. Specifically, the state objects to the proposed testimony of expert witnesses identified in defendant's exhibits D7 and D13, appended to defendant's supplemental response to request for discovery regarding expert witnesses. In support of this motion, the state respectfully refers the Court of Idaho Code 18207, which provides that mental condition shall not be a defense to any charge of criminal conduct except expert evidence on the issues of any state of mind, which is an element of the offense. In each of the witness summaries, defendants exhibit D7 and D13, the defendant specifically states the testimony is not intended to be a mental element defense pursuant to Idaho Code, but rather this testimony is about state of mind as well as factual defense testimony to anticipated testimony elicited by the state. As such, this proposed testimony falls outside of the mental condition evidence allowable under Idaho Code.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
They're going to be going back and forth.
Oh, yes. They absolutely will be.
And then I think the next is the alternative perpetrator evidence. So it sounds like to me that they're trying to ensure that pretty much like that kind of like insanity defense kind of thing, like you're not
right.
blaming it on this condition, like reasons of why a crime may have been committed. Is that how you took it?
Yeah. Oh, and because they're very much going down this avenue, even with Anne saying, hey, I don't even want psychopath or sociopath mentioned in this trial. Wait, what? Like, kind of the same thing with any derivative of murder. Like, she's trying the most, but then I think it also kind of will correlate to the motion to strike the death penalty off the table, get the death penalty per the ASD diagnosis.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. So this is the state's motion in limine regarding the alternative perpetrator evidence. So this is respectfully moving the court in limine for an order prohibiting the defendant Kohberger from offering alternative perpetrator evidence or argument without first satisfying the court that any such evidence is relevant and admissible pursuant to IRE 401, 402, 403. In support of this motion, the state refers to Court and Counsel, State v. Meister, where the Idaho Supreme Court addressed the standard for addressing the admissibility of an alternative perpetrator. So they're just doing case law. So then they cited State v. Self. In this case, during the course of the investigation, literally thousands of tips regarding possible perpetrators were received by law enforcement. With the exception of information regarding the defendant, Kohberger, none of these tips were substantiated. The state submits that any attempt by Kohberger to offer or argue an alternative perpetrator theory without evidence specifically connecting person or persons other than Kohberger to the homicides would do nothing more than mislead and confuse the jury, and would also result in undue delay, waste of time, and would be a needless presentation of cumulative evidence and unfairly prejudice the state. Under the Idaho Supreme Court's ruling in Meister, this should be prohibited. The state respectfully submits that Kohberger should be precluded from offering or arguing alternative perpetrator evidence without first meeting the relevance and admissibility thresholds. So that's interesting. And I think, granted, there would absolutely be so much confusion to the jurors because this is a big burden that the jurors have to meet. There is so much information, so much evidence. There's going to be so many experts. Like, you guys, this is going to be months and months long every day. And when you open the door to an alternative perpetrator, that's going to be Anne constantly throwing questions and curveballs that the jury may not even fully understand what she's doing versus causing confusion. Now, if she could meet those thresholds, if she could prove where she's going before they even get into that courtroom, okay, then that's fair enough. But I think it's good that they're establishing this before they even get into the trial.
I agree. I actually have like a couple things to say about this, Melissa. I love your thoughts. So I took this as one, like the defense has been going along, and I know this will be next that we're probably going to read over, that they're going on with the defense.
Alibi.
Their defense strategy is the alibi
Correct.
defense.
Correct.
So if you're going to go for third party perpetrator defense, then they should have already submitted that to the court and also given the state that that time as well to be able to look into it and get their discovery, exchange, etc. Now that's the one piece. So they were already going for alibi defense. Two, the reason why I think I think this was filed immediately is because I went back and I'm re-listening to the hearings. And been trying to go all the way back, but most importantly, the January 23rd and 24th hearings, because so many people have been stuck on this fact that there was this blood spot that was found between the first and second floor, and then there was the gloves
on the glove.
But, and I think it went back to we need to file this because Judge said that the DNA on a knife sheath is, probable cause every day, twice a day on Sunday.
Yes.
And he even stated in that hearing that, if you think that there's possible other perpetrators and that is being investigated, that's a separate probable cause. This one's specifically for Bryan.
He did say that. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And he said this one's specifically for Bryan. And I think that this is the state trying to narrow that argument to ensure that some hanky stuff don't start happening during trial. That's just my opinion.
You're absolutely right, though, because I forgot about that until you just mentioned it, and that's why it's so good and critical to go over things again. He did explain that that's a completely separate issue. And I seen, now that you mentioned it, I've seen a lot of people going on about there was blood on the railing. Why wasn't it tested? Listen, the blood that mattered was the blood on the sheath of the murder weapon found under or next to the bodies of the victims. And I'm not saying no blood anywhere else in the house doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, again, we've said this so many times, if they strip your house down, there's going to be spots, a little spot here, a little spot there, that is going to react presumptive to blood. If you go outside my house right now, especially in New York, the likelihood that there's blood on an item right outside my house is high, honestly. But as far as we know, the killer never even took that path.
And I think that was the most important part is they went with the evidence that was in the vicinity of the crime scene, you know. That's important. There's
Right.
a lot of people that can walk through a house and be transient and different things, but specifically that DNA on the sheath. And the other thing I also see like being misconstrued is they're like, well, there was blood found on the sheath. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably the victim's. And then
Absolutely.
and the whole touch like DNA thing, like it's single source, guys. It's not mixed. If
Right.
it was a mixed one, I can understand there being this transfer, but that's not a transfer technically.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's a transfer from a skin to this, but it's not from one person to another person to another person. It's one single source. That's important.
One single source, meaning it came directly, possibly from transfer, but like it, well, obviously from transfer, but from the
But
person that was bleeding. If
no,
this
from
was what?
no, meaning the skin epithelial cells. Those came
Oh,
directly
oh,
from the
I'm sorry.
person. I wanted to bring up the blood thing too, because that was the other thing. They were like, it's not his blood on the sheath. I'm like, yeah, it's probably the victim's.
Yes,
But the second part was the epithelial cells being
those
single
cells.
source. They're
Right,
not mixed.
right. Meaning it didn't. It's not like, okay, so say, because I remember people argued this in the beginning, maybe Kohberger touched that sheath at a knife show, right?
Mhm.
Well, then you would expect not only Kohberger's, but the person who may have been handling the knife at the knife shows skin cells to also be on, a mixture. It wasn't a mixture. It was a single source.
Right. And I like to look at things a little bit further.
No,
Like,
we're talking about, I'm sorry, and don't mean to interrupt you. The blood we're talking about a second ago was on the railing from the first to second floor. I wasn't talking about the sheath.
I was, because there was blood on the sheath.
Mm-hmm.
It said whenever we went over the
Yeah, there was
redacted,
blood.
yeah, the redacted transcript that came out from the hearing that they had that was closed, that is what they went over. And a lot of people were shocked by that piece and they kind of
Mm-hmm.
held on to that too. And it's like, just because you're not given every bit of information, like people can like run wild with it. And I understand, but I think that the single source DNA of the epithelial cells on the button of the sheath is super important, that it's not mixed. It's not mixed like underneath the fingernails where you have, with the thing with Maddie, like you got to think she was at the grub truck, she was at Corner Club, like she could have all kinds of shit under her nails.
Mm-hmm.
Nails are nasty. You get a lot of stuff
Oh
underneath
yeah.
those.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I was just trying to figure out what was your comment in response to Hey Girl Hey. I don't know if you're talking to us on panel or if you were talking to someone in the chat. Because I don't recall reading a comment of yours. But there's no stupid question, Andrea. This might be a stupid question, but the blood in the rail, couldn't it have been Hunter's? Maybe accidentally touched blood when he first saw Xana. It could have been, and as far as we know, he didn't touch any of the victims. I don't know yet. We don't know yet.
But how would that be Hunter's blood? That would mean Hunter'd have to be bleeding if it
I
was
think she
Xana's
meant
blood.
from Hunter. I think she meant from Hunter, like
Yeah.
touching and then touching the railing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that more needs to come out, like possibly having the expert who did the testing to be able to determine how well are they be able to determine the age that blood has been there, and where at in the staircase was that blood found is
Mhm.
important. Like, was it just like on the inside, like of a handrail? Was it like a spot like on, I don't know. You know what I mean? I think that there's certain things that people want to cherry pick, and for that, I want to be able to point back like a single source DNA is really important here,
Well,
and that's hard to fight, And I think that's what Judge Hippler was kind of like writing on with it. Is you have this other DNA in the house, but when they were doing the Frank's motions, that specifically trying to untangle all that evidence, that probable cause was directly for Bryan. So if you think there's other perpetrators, then continue the investigation, figure out where that may lie. But if some of the evidence that's collected isn't directly in the vicinity of the crime scene, then it may hold no importance.
mm-hmm. And hey, girl, hi. We weren't talking to any of you guys though. Like, and to be fair, if when I'm talking about something I heard, you don't know what I heard, right? You don't know how ridiculous and out there it is. And same with Shay. So I don't know. We weren't talking we weren't talking to any of you guys, so I don't know why it would come off that way. But I do wish of course I wish everything was tested. Of like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, I wish it wasn't. But I'm also not educated enough to know, is that unusual? Like, or is it not unusual?
No.
You know?
No, that's why they have like search warrants being specific about things that you can collect and even testing and what you do and the vet and how that values is because you could go into any home at any time and I'm sure you will find different people's DNA. Say if you have people live there before, you have family over. Could you imagine even if like you never built your home yourself, having to go back and find maybe a spot of blood that it was there maybe 10 years ago you didn't know about? To like rule out other things, like if it wasn't in the vicinity of the crime, and we got to kind of think a little bit, into that. Like I think that's not probable in all circumstances, because then you may start crossing the boundary and asking them to go and IgG everybody for stuff that's not relevant, and could that potentially make other people feel like their rights are being, evaded?
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair. But the sheath, like alleged sheath that was alleged weapon next to the body of a deceased person, this is his probable cause.
Right.
The other stuff doesn't negate him. And I think that's important.
That is extremely important, that even so, if you're like, hey, well, that could be potentially someone else, it doesn't, like, let's say you believe that more than one person were in there. Okay, that's fair. But it doesn't negate Kohberger's DNA being where it was.
Right. And that's what I think that sometimes gets lost. And some people, maybe if they haven't followed it fully or seen cases where they've had multiple perpetrators or seen court stuff really pan out, like maybe they first, got into true crime because of this case, that those questions are natural to have. But I think having a bigger discussion about it, it's not about picking a side, it's just following what we can understand of the law.
Oh, for sure, Marcus. And again, like I don't, even when we were going through Kohberger's search warrant years ago, okay, I said, as we read every item that had, a small reddish smear mark on the bathroom, outer door here, this, that, I said, I still would not be surprised if there's going to be small preemptive positive blood markings, and that's natural. Okay, everyone would, whether you cut your finger and you go and you open up the bathroom mirror and you go to get a band-aid, even if you clean it up, if they then spray Blue Star, it's gonna become lit up. Okay, it's natural. There was even blood in the Letitia Stauch's house, in Harley's room, that most likely had nothing to do with it, right? It wouldn't be so strange in a house full of girls that you're gonna have little blood here and there. That's not strange to me, and it could be completely unrelated. I think it would be stranger if you sprayed an entire house and you didn't find even a spot, little speckle of blood. That's correct. As far as we know, Nancy, that is correct. And that's going to be a main argument. But again, we don't have all the information yet. So that's what's so interesting. So I kind of wait and I go with, what do we have now? What are they saying? But Anne is also a master at how she words things. And that's why I think it's so interesting to see these documents, because now we are finally getting more to the story. Like, hey, this is what she said, the same way she said X, Y, and Z is exculpatory evidence. And we've been finding out her version of exculpatory evidence is not what I imagined being exculpatory evidence. They found 3, one likely to be her own, right? But that's, how unusual do you think it is to find that they were out drinking at a bar? They were at that food truck. The other one may have been Kaylee's. What, like, that's not, even if she did not have any defensive, like there was no defense in this murder. 3 mixed DNA underneath a female's fingernails does not surprise me at all.
And what happens if an expert comes up and states that they don't believe that Maddie had any kind of defense? What if she was asleep? Like, then it's pretty much a moot point. But if you go based on rumors right now, if you hear that Kaylee put up a fight and Xana put up a fight, I could see where somebody may have a little bit more question, but at the same time, you could also be completely covered in your body to ensure that certain things like that wouldn't happen. Just because like he was in school in a PhD program for criminology doesn't mean he's the smartest person in the room and he's going to like cover all the bases. She's
Right,
got him caught.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't hers, you know?
Yeah, sorry, I'll stop with my tangents. I've been watching too much shit and reading
No,
stuff.
you're fine, but it's good to have the conversation because that's the only way we could really understand what we're reading.
Right. And and that the evidence circumstantially, it's looked at as a whole. We could pick apart each thing and say, oh, this doesn't really matter. This could lead to this.
No, criminology doesn't, it's not a one-on-one how to get away with murder. But what I will tell you, right, you're definitely more familiar with certain things, but I could say the same thing being in true crime, right? And what I can tell you, though, I think it's a mute argument to say his ASD diagnosis prevents him from aiding in his own defense whatsoever when he was able to not only be a criminology student, but to teach classrooms. Do not tell me he's incapable of even aiding in his own defense to the extent of verbally relaying things. Because that's all he has to do.
I think that his and I don't know him, but what I'm perceiving is maybe somewhere in the spectrum, he falls more in having lower social emotional intelligence, which is a difference than having book smart knowledge intelligence. And
Absolutely.
I think that's where things get confused as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry. I'm very like on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. So let's look at, okay. Alibi.
Right.
States. Sorry. Every time I even think of the alibi, it makes me giggle. So let's see. What do we got here? Let me write this down. So we got the state's motion in limine regarding the alibi or the lack thereof. So it says that they are moving the court in limine for an order prohibiting Kohberger from presenting any evidence, whether by direct or cross-examination, in support of any claimed alibi other than the defendant himself. And this circles back around to what we had just read, right, regarding the alternative perpetrator evidence, because if you went with alibi defense, okay, and they had a back and forth about this earlier on, but if you were going to introduce another perpetrator, that would have been your time. But now, regarding this alibi, don't try to incorporate someone else. This is regarding you, because if there was someone else, that is your alibi, right? If you weren't there and you were with someone else, that would have been the time to do it. So it says, by way of background, the state refers to the court for the following. So the request for discovery disclosure, their alibi demand, May 23rd, 2023, July 22nd, the motion to compel the notice of defense or alibi, and then August 2nd, the objection to the state's motion to compel for the motive of defense or alibi, the attached partial transcript of August 18th, 2023 court hearing related to the alibi, where the then presiding Judge John Judge observed that the Kohbergers proffered so-called alibi not really an alibi, quote, and that he will address the issue of alibi disclosure in a subsequent scheduling order. August 22nd, 2023, scheduling order, which in paragraph 7 at page 2 addresses the deadline for the defense to comply with its statutory obligations for alibi disclosure. It was subsequently vacated when Kohberger waived his right for a speedy trial. So December 21st, 2023, we had the motion for a scheduling order, which in the second full paragraph on page 3 refers to the issue of alibi. February 23rd, 2024, the order setting deadlines and hearing, which in paragraph 1 sets an alibi compliance deadline of April 17th, 2024. The defendant's April 17th notice of defendant's supplemental response to state's alibi demand. The state's April 26th response to notice of defendant's supplemental response to state's alibi demand. And then former presiding Judge John Judge, June 27, 2024, scheduling order, which is subsequent to the April 17th, 2024 alibi disclosure deadline, and which makes no further reference to alibi. It has now been approximately 20 months since the state first made its request for discovery disclosure alibi demand, and on May 23rd, 2023. As the court file reflects, Kohberger has failed to comply with the requirements of Idaho Code. The defendant has yet to specify, quote, the specific place or places at which Kohberger claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense, and the names and addresses of the witnesses upon who he intends to rely to establish such an alibi, as directed by the February 23rd, 2024 order settling deadlines and hearing, and as discussed in the state's April 26, 2024 response to the notice of defendant's supplemental response to state's alibi demand. So, it does not comply with the requirements of Idaho Code or with the specific directive of the court's February order. Consequently, Kohberger should be prohibited from presenting any evidence, whether by direct or cross-examination, in support of any claimed alibi other than Kohberger himself. Even were Kohberger to attempt to comply at this late point in time, the state is irrevocably prejudiced. It has now been over 2 years since the homicides occurred and since Kohberger was charged, and it would be unrealistic at this late date to expect the state to effectively investigate and respond to any or new additional alibi-related disclosures. This is precisely the situation that caused concern for the Idaho Court of Appeals in State v. Juarez. So for these reasons, the court issue an order prohibiting Kohberger from presenting any evidence, whether by direct or cross-examination, in support of any claimed alibi other than Kohberger himself. Now, I 100% agree with this because of the timeline. Do you guys remember back when we first got Kohberger's first alibi? Then they're like, that was so not specific. You have to give a specific place and time. Then they came back with it, and it was a stargazing, right? Awa Park, whatever it's called. And if the state has a right to know the same way the defense has a right to know, so that they can investigate and be prepared. So at this point, absolutely, it makes sense. You can't come in and all of a sudden throw a name at us of someone who can be an eyewitness for you and an alibi. That's just not fair. You've had more than enough time, over 2 years of enough time to present this to the state.
I think I agree, but I also wonder, why not change your defense if you don't really have an alibi? Like, that's kind of my question, in general, to the defense. And also, I always told you, I felt like the way that a lot of the court hearings and motions and stuff were happening was it was like Anne trying to get the state to show them their hand and how they would put on the case. The evidence didn't change. It's how we plan to interpret and use it, right?
Right.
And so my opinion was that you've gotten to this point that your alibi should be easy. It should be done quickly. and yes, there would take time to, say the defense's investigator to like follow up, check all that stuff, have all that evidence ready. But being able to say your alibi,
Right.
like 2 years later, no, you're waiting on to see what evidence works
They
or doesn't
have,
work
and
with your
build your
case.
alibi around it. And that's what I was
That's
about
not
to say,
right.
because I saw that, like the state was dragging their feet on the cast. And listen, I'm not going to argue that everything wasn't done. Absolutely. I think that there were times where the state was like, and then there's times that the defense is like, But if you have an alibi, you have that alibi no matter, you don't need to see that evidence. You have your alibi. You see what I'm saying? So I don't, if I know, hey, come tomorrow, I was accused of something tonight, and I know at 9:20 p.m. Eastern, I'm sitting here on my live stream. I don't need to see what you have. I know where I was and where I wasn't, and I'm going to put that forward. And yes, in time, like Shay said, you could build your evidence and you could get my metadata to prove where I was, right? To make sure that this all lines up. But I still was able to present it and submit it. But it's not even getting specific with that. It's just getting specific as far as, do not try to throw anybody in besides yourself. This alibi is about you alone. You cannot throw a name in there now at this point. That's just not how it's going to work.
Right. And I think what kind of put this more in a spotlight and to be challenging is because, it's stated in the PCA and even states it in her court hearing arguments that his phone was off the network. And, she's not going to disclose attorney-client privilege. So my question would be, Bryan, why was your phone off the network? And like I said, look at habitual behavior. This presented a problem. And this is also why it looks suspicious to people.
They're not requiring that, Nancy, actually, that they're not requiring that. If you're going to go with an alibi defense, though, there are burdens and requirements that need to be met, right? But even if I turn around, Nancy, okay, play devil's advocate here with me, and I wasn't on a live stream tonight, I end up going for a drive for an hour. I can't tell you specifically where I was at a specific time, but what I can tell you is I passed CVS at some point in this 1 hour timeline, right? I know that I hopped on the Parkway. I stopped and got gas. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
There would be, hey, I can't tell you exactly anyone I interacted with that corroborate that with for me, but I know if you check these cameras, right, whatever along this path of travel, can't tell you a specific time, but within that hour, I know that this is where I passed, this is what I was near, and they would be able to obtain that and prove that fairly easily.
Right. I think a lot of people hang on to like every word like Anne says, and they're like, oh, she's filing this because of this, and even the state too. I mean, I look at it both ways, but I also look at it as when you're at this point when you're fighting certain evidence to get in, then maybe because it could, in conjunction with other evidence, make your client possibly look more guilty to a jury. And we don't have any answers of like really where, like what he was doing, like what's the proof of that. And that really is unfortunate. Say this person was never around these areas, but if you add in the other evidence and they're able to corroborate it, it does leave room for that speculation. Now I do think that the evidence being heavier for the DNA on the sheath is kind of like, how do you explain that? And even listening to Anne in court, like not be able to explain it is just as interesting,
Mm-hmm.
So the alibi thing I think is interesting because I've always wondered, like, what were they going to really use when they said that they were going to use the state's experts to prove his alibi? Okay, so you're expecting to refute some of what was pulled. I know they got Cyree in there, and there's different experts, but what has been shown as of what in May 2023 was the trial with the hearing with court. court hearing with Cyree, what has happened since now? And then it would be interesting, what other investigative measures have they put together to close gaps? I think if there was an opening there, Anne would be all over it.
For sure. And I hear it I saw Fleur Shingle say, in like her area, which is, I'm assuming lesser known, right? Less populated, she could go for a drive and stop in an area and look at the sky. Absolutely. That's why it's going to be so important to show how often did he, one, take these nighttime drives, but two, disconnect from the network during said nighttime drives. Was this usual? Often? Very unusual? Not often. The disconnecting from the network is a major piece in this.
Right.
And the times, not just the disconnecting from the network, the times it was disconnected and the times it reconnected.
And then when he reconnected, according to the AT&T, the AT&T, Amazon, Google, Apple order that Judge Hippler issued, that it stated in there that he accessed through VPN a recovery email address right after the crimes. I find that really interesting.
It was really interesting. Sorry, I muted so I could open a pack of Gushers without being obnoxious.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't apologize. I was just saying I didn't mean to leave you hanging. And yes, harlot, let's also, if we're going with the whole stargazing, right? It was foggy.
Right.
I've showed that many times. The overcast, you could not see the stars, but never mind that,
And I think that's why the state also has somebody with an expertise in weather that's going to testify.
Mm-hmm.
Is they're going to break down that alibi too.
Absolutely. But again, and I love hearing everyone's feedback. I love debating. Yeah, I love debating it. I love seeing what is unusual to one person versus what is usual to another person, right? They don't take it as anything unusual, but that's why everything else is going to come into play though, right? It's not just whether you could believe someone could go for a nighttime drive, right? It's going to be accumulative. It's going to be everything collectively together that's going to put those pieces. So that one piece, how autistically artsy, they could take that. You could look at that one piece and be like, I don't see an issue with that. But when you take all the other pieces and you put them where they need to be placed, you're going to see a bigger image. I don't know what that ending image is going to show, right? I'm just moving around the pieces right now and trying to get an idea of it. But you have to look at all of the evidence collectively.
Right. And my mind goes to what are the odds that there's a white Elantra that's driving around that they have on camera? What are the odds that this person's DNA is on a knife sheath next to a murder victim? What are the odds that their cell phones turn off? What are the odds that this person this phone returns to the same area the next morning and they don't even live in that same city? Apparently, they had been in that area, 12 times total it was that they
never
reported?
returned again after the morning of.
What are the odds?
What's the likelihood? Hi, Lizzie. Okay. What should we go for next?
Okay, sorry.
For what do you keep apologizing for?
I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit probably more just in my outspokenness tonight, maybe because I've just processed a lot. I think our next one's the admissibility. This is going to be the house.
Okay.
The Barbie model house, people keep calling it.
Yeah. Right, King Scarlet, and disconnecting from the network perfectly during the exact times that this is happening. Again, I'm not saying 100% it means he's guilty versus Occam's razor. Sorry, I realize that I pronounce it in a way people think I'm mispronouncing it versus I just say it fast so it comes out like Ockman's, but it's Occam's razor. Yeah, me too, Jahara.
I didn't know if it was a Jadeism, so I just rolled
Yeah,
with
just roll. Either or, just roll with it. Okay.
it.
If I had to spell it, I can guarantee I'll spell it correctly, but I pronounce things differently if you guys haven't picked up by that now. So,
My favorite is when you pronounce cucumber.
cucumber.
Oh, shoot. I don't know if
That's
Meat
true,
Pizza's still
Jessica.
here, but that's like her favorite too.
Yeah, I like cucumber. Yeah. So we have, and I just now that we're about to do the house. Hi, Bogart. I just want to remind people because I know that I see a lot of people say, well, and now the house is demolished, so we can't. They even first, and I didn't like it either. But let me remind you guys, neither state nor defense argued it. Number one. Number two, the jury would not be able to go into that house even if it was standing.
Right.
Period. There is no OJ walkthrough the way that the jury did. It would not be allowed.
Well, because allegedly they had dismantled the stairs on both levels
Yeah.
fully,
And it
and
was
the walls were removed. So,
yes. And it was oh god, I forgot the word. It was yeah, it's a hazmat site. It would be a risk.
well, I think they ended up having it cleaned before they tore it down because of some of that purposes. But um, yeah, I don't think that they were going to spend the money to put the house back together. You got to think
No.
too that you got the furniture all out. The families have already gotten back their things that what
Yes.
they wasn't in evidence. So
But
unfortunately, no.
I just get a little bit frustrated because if this was an issue for the defense would have argued it. They didn't. Biohazard. And you corrected me last time too, ASV. Thank you. Biohazard. But if it was you took down the house, now we can't do that. The defense would have argued against it. They didn't, you guys.
Yeah.
They didn't.
It,
It's gone right now, Jahara. I
well,
know, Clicker, me too. Sorry.
I was gonna say, and I was reading King's comment. Hey, girl. Yeah, I agree too, but I also think that people forget that, like, for the victims that were on the beds, those mattresses and blankets and stuff would have soaked up quite a bit too.
Mm-hmm. We saw that they did.
And I actually listened to Duty Ron and Ed Wallace, and Ed even, confirmed that too. And that was his world, CSI. So I just hearing from professionals kind of explain, like in some of those scenes where you have a victim in the bed like that, it's not uncommon that they will soak up quite a bit.
Absolutely. We saw the mattresses alone, guys. And that would be underneath all of the bedding. And it was
Mhm.
horrible. It was horrible. Oh, absolutely, Jahara, because there was an extension. It was an extension built. You had 2 ground floors. It was very confusing the first couple of days trying to figure out the layout of it.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But here we have the state's motion in limine for the admissibility of demonstrative exhibits and memorandum in support.
You may read.
Yeah, it's you.
Sorry. Comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney and respectfully moves this court for a pretrial order regarding the admissibility of demonstrative exhibits. Hold on one second. I got a cough. Sorry to clear my throat. Specifically, the state will seek to introduce a 3-dimensional model of the 1122 King Road residence for demonstrative purposes to aid the witnesses in their testimony. The state further submits the following memorandum in support of its request. 1, standard of admissibility. Trial courts are endowed with discretion over the use of demonstrative exhibits during trial and offers some case law. A diagram offered, I'm going to go down to the next paragraph. So a diagram offered for demonstrative purposes need only to be relevant to illustrate a witness's testimony. It does not need to be precisely accurate, i.e. not to scale. And then a little bit more case law says that finding the use of demonstrative exhibits at trial appropriate to aid the understanding of testimony that may otherwise be difficult to comprehend through words or gestures alone. I actually think this is a good idea, you know, with the house being gone, for people to kind of be able to see that. And then we're going to go down to the argument. So in this case, the state anticipates introducing a three-dimensional model of 1122 King Road residence, the Exhibit S1 attached at trial. The model will consist of 3 levels, which can be removed by level to show the interior layout of the residence. The interior layout will depict wall and door placements, i.e. no furniture, human depictions. The model will be placed on a rolling table for portability within the courtroom, i.e. can be placed out of the way when not in use. The model is being constructed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation based on depictions, documentation, and measurements taken at the scene prior to demolition of King Road residence. The primary purpose of this model is to aid the jury in having a better understanding of the layout of the residence, which is unconventional, and to illustrate where certain events occurred within the residence. The model will aid certain witnesses, i.e. law enforcement, surviving roommates, individuals responding to the crime scene, and crime scene analyst, in demonstrating the location of victims, location of witnesses, location of items of evidence, items related to their testimony, path of travel, etc. The state anticipates laying the proper foundation to establish the model accurately reflects the layout of the 1122 King Road residence. The model passes the IRE 403 balancing test as the value in facilitating the jury and visually understanding where facts an issue occurred at the crime scene far outweighs any danger of unfair prejudice, distraction, confusion of the issues, or wasted time. This model will merely aid witnesses' testimony and is not being introduced to establish a certain fact and issue, therefore is not hearsay under IRE 801. The state requests the court issue an order allowing the state to use the three-dimensional model and the residents finding that the model is relevant in order to aid witnesses in their testimony provided by the state's lays out adequate foundation for the demonstrative exhibit.
Now, I will say,
And it's got a picture on the last page.
Oh, it's really cool and helpful that. Oh, look at that.
You may have to turn it on. There you go.
It's really cool and helpful that we do have technology that comes into play and that this is an option.
Yeah.
Because before this technology was available, it with all of the factors we said earlier and a house having to be taken down, we would be dealing with physical drawn out diagrams, you know? And it makes it, as a visual person myself, makes it so much easier to understand when you can see it.
I agree with you. You know, and you guys, the thing with the Murdaugh is it's not a common practice for the jury to go visit the crime scene site. So I think even having the ability to have the 3D model is an extra plus for both parties.
Absolutely.
Arguing.
Absolutely. And I'll never forget with OJ, they changed the artwork, Shay. Like, they messed with that house and it did not look the same when the jury came in. That's some messed up shit.
Yeah.
Now that wouldn't fly in every case. Like in a case like this, like that really wouldn't play too much of a role, you know, like, but you do have to worry about shady shit like that happening. Yeah, Jennifer, it's great, right, Lizzie? It's Leon. I agree. I agree with all of you. I agree with all of you. It's great to have that because when my brain, and not everyone is like me, but if you're like me, the difference between seeing it versus trying to visualize it in my head makes all of the difference. Like if you can show me kind of how something happens, that is when it'll click for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So
We
let's
have gone.
see.
Sorry, I was reading them too. So we got the motion. So we've already gone through the motions to strike the death penalty. I was scrolling up, sorry.
Eliminate genetic death penalty comments. You want to read that? Or immediate improper death penalty comments?
What is the one that says the state's motion in limine right above the motion to exceed page limit?
State's motion to seal motions in limine and exhibits 2 motions in limine.
Okay, you want to just work up? Because that's kind of how they loaded. We can keep going from there. And this one's small. It's like a 1-pager. And I think this is to kind of preempt what we're about to go over. And some of the stuff.
Why is this one labeled William W?
What do you mean?
Look, all of them normally have their titles, but this one is William W.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see that pull up on mine.
Yeah.
That's weird. I don't know.
Okay. So this is the motion to seal motions in limine and exhibits 2 motions in limine. So they're moving the court for sealing the following motions: state's motion in limine, improper death penalty comments, which we're going to read; state's motion in limine, RE the 911 call; the text messages and testimony from the state's motion; the exhibits regarding the immediate family members in the courtroom; the self-authentication of records in reliance on IRE 8036 and 8 and XYZ. The documents and or media contain details which are currently sealed from public disclosure: grand jury testimony, grand jury exhibits, sealed audio of hearings, and constitute an unwarranted invasion of privacy, i.e. the list of immediate family, and or contains details not currently known to the public which could impede the court's ability to select a fair and impartial jury. The state has contacted the defense counsel and they have no objection at this time.
The only thing I could think of, and maybe it'll answer it when we get there and it may come full circle, is what if whenever they're following that immediate family members in the courtroom, what if when they did list that out, they realized that some of those people weren't under that non-contact order, that no contact order. And so
it said that he requested, though. You know what I mean? The dad.
Right. Maybe because like in reading the documents, like there was, it's redacted, but you can see by each victim, from what I recall seeing of it, that they have a list. We'll get to it. And maybe that kind of was like, hey, I need to make sure that my people are protected. I don't know. It was just a thought. Ignore me.
No, you're fine. I was just reading Pity Mama's comment. We're sending you a lot of positive vibes, Pity Mama. And yes, Andrea, I know the 3D virtual tour. Thank you. And yes, it's absolutely amazing. That's okay, Adam. Okay, so our next up would be the state's motion in limine, investigative genetic genealogy. Okay.
You want me to go?
Yep.
All right. Hold on 1 second. I'll plug in this iPad real quick. Okay. So it comes now, the state of Idaho, by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, and respectfully moves the court in limine for an order 1, describing the extent to which the parties can refer at trial to the investigative genetic genealogy, IGG, used in this case. And 2, excluding from the trial any testimony or evidence related to the United States Department of Justice interim policy on forensic genetic genealogical DNA analysis and searching DOJ policy. See, I knew it. He was doing this right after that hearing. Okay.
Mhm.
The terms of service of any of the genetic genealogy subscription services, the policy debate on whether law enforcement should use IgG in criminal investigations, and any alleged discovery violations. The name Bryan, I'm going on to the next page.
No, you're fine. I know you're reading from your own.
Yeah, I like the split because it still has where like StreamYard will like kind of glitch
Yeah,
and
that makes
I
sense.
lose my place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the name Bryan Kohberger first appeared on law enforcement's radar in this matter because of IgG, and IgG has been the subject of much litigation in this case. Most recently, the court found the use of IgG during the investigation did not violate Kohberger's Fourth Amendment rights. See order on defendant's motion to suppress regarding genetic information. Order filed 2/19/25. The remaining question is the extent to which the parties will be allowed to discuss IgG and related information at trial. The state's view from the outset has been that the IgG information was nothing more than a tip, and that's in quotes, and was never intended to, quote, prove or substantiate Kohberger's guilt, unquote. So the motive for protective order was on page 10, filed on June 16th of 2023. Instead, the state planned to rely at trial on the evidence developed after the use of IgG, such as the, quote, STR DNA analysis that found Kohberger's DNA matched the DNA collected from the K-bar knife sheath, unquote. The state also made clear from the beginning that it would need to reference the IgG information in some manner at trial, even if only as a generic tip, to help the jury understand how the investigation progressed. The defense, on the other hand, has been all in on presenting the IgG at trial.
Mm-hmm.
It is now disclosed 2 experts, Leah Larkin and Daniel Hellwig, whose sole focus is information related to the IgG. The disclosure for Ms. Larkin indicates that the defense wants to discuss more than the IgG itself, but also present to the jury information one step further removed, including allegations that the FBI's use of IgG in the investigation violated a U.S. Department of Justice policy, the terms of service of certain genetic genealogy databases, and foreign law. The state now seeks an order from this court describing the extent to which the parties will be allowed to reference IgG at trial and excluding the more tenuous information disclosed by the defense. A. This court should enter an order describing the extent to which the parties can refer at trial to the IgG used in this case. The state should be allowed to present the IgG information, at least as a generic tip, to help the jury understand how the investigation progressed. Evidence must be relevant to be admissible. See IRE 402. Evidence is relevant if, quote, it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence, unquote. And, quote, the fact is of consequence in determining the action, unquote, according to IRE 401. Testimony from an investigator as to how an investigation progressed can be relevant and admissible. It references state law, so see State versus Hall. And so I actually will kind of read this a little bit because I think a lot of people wonder where the basis is. In Hall, a detective testified about how he used DNA to eliminate an individual as a suspect in the investigation. The district court overruled a relevancy objection, and the Idaho Supreme Court affirmed. The court explained that the testimony was relevant because it provided the jury with a complete story, and that it explained why the police no longer considered the individual a suspect, and provided the jury with details about how the investigation progressed. The court also observed that the testimony was relevant to refute the defendant's contention that the former suspect was involved in the victim's murder. That is not to say, however, that such testimony is always relevant and admissible. And then it quotes another case, and then this one it says, in State versus Borner, Boner. Does that say boner?
Bonaire.
Bonaire. Uh, sorry. Oh, Lord. An officer testified that a dispatcher had told him that the defendant had said he wanted to kill a cop. The district court overruled an objection on the basis that the statement was offered for the limited purpose of showing what information the officers possess and how this information might bear on the subsequent actions of the officers. The Idaho Supreme Court disagreed, finding that limited purpose was not relevant. The court reasoned that the facts of consequences during the state's case in chief were facts bearing on the elements of the offense charge, and evidence of the motives of the officers' actions on the night in question did not prove any element of the offense charge. But the court noted the testimony would have been relevant to review a defense challenge to the reasonableness of the officers' conduct after hearing the radio report. Here, the IDG information falls on the Hall side of the line. So the first court one we just went over, presenting the fact that law enforcement received a tip directing them toward the defendant is necessary to provide the jury with a complete story by explaining why law enforcement considered Kohberger a suspect. So it says in Hall, and unlike the challenge testimony in Bonaire, the IDG information is relevant to rebut a defense challenge to the reasonableness of the officer's conduct. Specifically, the defense has signaled its plan to present the jury the theory that law enforcement rushed to judgment when it focused on Kohberger as a suspect. Hold on. I get a drink.
It just references the different
Right.
sections.
So, different. Okay. IgG information is relevant to refute the theory, so thus the state should be permitted to present the IgG information at least as a generic tip. B. This court should exclude from trial alleged violations of the DOJ policy, terms of service, and foreign law, policy debates about privacy, and allegations of discovery violations.
That's
No
going to
matter
be an issue people focus on.
this part,
Yeah, the court should exclude from trial alleged violations of the DOJ policy, terms of service, and foreign law, policy debates about privacy, and allegations of discovery violations. Because that's Anne's entire argument.
but it was already denied by the order with the Franks motion. So
I know, but you know how everyone is.
yeah, I get it. So, no matter how the court rules on the extent to which the parties can discuss at trial the IGG conducted in this case, the court should exclude as irrelevant and prejudicial several categories of information the defense has indicated they plan on raising at trial. The Idaho rules of evidence require that evidence be relevant to be admissible at trial. Evidence is relevant if it's probative, having any tendency to make a fact more or less probable, and material being of consequence in determining the action. Whether an issue is relevant requires understanding those theories concerning the crime charged, the elements of that crime, and the ultimate issue that the jury is asked to determine. So this is just case law. Even relevant evidence may be excluded by the district court if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, which we actually hear this a lot in cases. That is something that they're always trying to determine. Is its probative value more important than what prejudice it may be against the defendant?
Right.
So the following categories of evidence should be excluded as irrelevant and inadmissible under Rule 403. First, this court should exclude testimony or evidence that the FBI's use of IgG in this case violated the DOJ policy, the terms of service of certain genetic genealogy subscription services, or any foreign law. So this has Larkin. So Larkin, who was who's one of the defense experts, it's referencing probably her CVV that was submitted. So no, sorry, this is from the closed hearing. So opining the FBI violated the DOJ policy in the terms of service of certain genetic genealogy databases. Larkin also, I guess, was stating one of the databases is an Israeli company, and opining that the database users may be protected by European privacy laws. So none of these allegations, even if true, bear any weight on the issue of the defendant's guilt. Tellingly, throughout all the IGG litigation in this case, the defense has failed to articulate any theory by which the alleged violations of the terms of service, DOJ policy, or any foreign law could have any effect whatever on the reliability of the IGG process. Instead, the defense pieces those alleged violations together to conclude the FBI would not have identified Mr. Kohberger so quickly had they followed protocol, unquote. But the speed with which law enforcement identified Kohberger has no bearing whatever on whether Kohberger committed the charged crimes. The evidence is also admissible under Rule 403 of the Idaho Rules of Evidence. The presentation of this evidence could unfairly prejudice the state's case if one or more jurors decides to give unrelated evidence, could unfairly prejudice the state's case if one or more jurors decide to give unrelated evidence less weight because they believe the FBI violated the DOJ policy. That makes sense. The terms of service or foreign law, even though those alleged violations could have no effect on Kohberger's guilt. Which, yeah, that's right, because Hitler said constitutionally they didn't break the law, they just broke a terms of service, which had
Correct.
a
And
clause.
It wasn't Kohberger's DNA anyway submitted. So it didn't break his TOS.
Right. Loaded. Okay. So moreover, allowing the defense to present this evidence would turn the criminal trial into something it's not. As this court observed, violations of the database's user policies may give rise to a civil action between the FBI and the particular database, or perhaps the individuals whose DNA profiles were used. But that action would be between two other parties in an entirely different case. Litigating that case during this trial would risk confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, and wasting time. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Second, this court should exclude any evidence or argument on the policy debate of whether law enforcement should use IGG in criminal investigations. So it's referring to Larkin's claiming DNA used for IGG can reveal, quote, intensely private information, unquote, like biomedical details and genetic risks such as addiction, Alzheimer's, autism. It's written right there. There you go, Melissa. Remember you kept saying she was using Alzheimer's? It's written now. Autism, bipolar disorder, cancer, cystic fibrosis, heart disease, schizophrenia, and many more.
Yep, there it was.
You got it. Whether as a matter of policy, law enforcement should use IGG in criminal investigations has nothing whatever to do with the issue of guilt in this case. This court has already solved the privacy issues as they relate to the Fourth Amendment. Any residual privacy concerns fall within the purview of the legislator, not the courts, and certainly not juries in criminal trials. If the defense is allowed to argue privacy policy to the jury, there is a significant risk that a juror will make their decision in the case based on their subjective view on privacy as opposed to their view of the evidence with respect to the defendant's guilt. And then third, this court should exclude any evidence of allegations related to the discovery process in this case. Larkin allegedly laminating that discovery has been an extremely involved and drawn out process and opining that the protective order hamstrung the defense. That's according to Larkin. So whether the defense received everything the defense believes it was entitled to during the discovery has nothing to do with the defendant's guilt. And allowing the defense to argue to the jury that the state should have produced more in discovery significantly risk unfairly prejudicing the state by improperly and inaccurately suggesting the state has hidden information to which the defendant is legally entitled. And I completely agree with that, because I think that has been a stall tactic of the defense, in my opinion, on some things, not all things. So the state therefore respectfully submits that this court should enter an order describing the extent to which the parties can discuss IGG at trial and excluding argument or evidence related to the DOJ policy, terms of service, foreign law, policy debates about privacy, and allegations of alleged discovery violations that are under Rules 401, 02, 03 of the Idaho Rules of Evidence. That makes sense.
Well, and I understand your points, Kadoosh. But when we were listening to the January 23rd court hearing, what the Judge Hippler and state were talking about were, even if the FBI specifically cut that corner, right? And access the database against terms of service, not laws, terms of service. It has nothing. Here's the main point. It is not related to what they are presenting as evidence against Kohberger. They are not bringing that in. They are not using that as evidence against Kohberger. You only argue evidence that they are using against your client, you know? It basically paralleled. That's what they're saying. It paralleled as that was happening. Their own investigation was happening, leading to Kohberger. So even if the FBI cut that corner, it has nothing to do with them, their case against Kohberger, nor are they using it. If they were using it, it would be a major issue. They're not using it. You see what I'm saying? But I understand your point, because and this was my concern from day one, that it would be Kohberger, but corners were cut.
Right. And I think that this is exactly what this is saying too, though, is that like I understand like the speed of things, but it doesn't negate, the defendant's guilt. And so the other stuff when it comes to how the FBI cut those corners, yeah, that needs to litigate elsewhere. And those are good things to point out for the future. But this at hand, I do think they were, like you said, Melissa, they were on to him, but it was going to take some time.
Right.
And whenever they had excuse me, whenever they had the lead detective on the stand, he even attested to they had calls, meetings twice a day. And then the ones like most specifically with when they were with the FBI and being presented the tip about Kohberger, they had other detectives there, and they also had um the prosecution team there. So they're also aware of what information is being related as well, It's just a tip.
Well, and so no, that isn't just the no. So they had their parallel investigation going, and they already had the car that they were looking for. So originally, WSU security officers ran their database for what cars specifically in that year range of Hyundai Elantras were registered. And then on top of that, they did a drive-by, and at his apartments, they noted, hey, there's this white Elantra, fits in the year range, and they marked it down and submitted it again as a tip. And that is when detectives they didn't take notice the first time around, but the second time around they did. And then so these two things were happening at the same time, and they got his information from that traffic stop that he got pulled over in.
Yeah, I think that you got to think how much like data and information they're having to go through. And so it didn't mean that at that time they knew that all of that was connected.
Right.
No, this tip helped put those individual, like you got to compartmentalize it, little investigation things that were already happening. But I think that like Anne was trying to kind of put it as well. The way that the PCA was worded was it looked like it was like the WSU police, gave this tip to them, and I didn't take it that. Like I understood that they were trying to, take all the evidence that they had been collected, especially against this one person, and like lay it out there in a format, not to say that they knew it was him at that time,
Yeah, her office did. Someone in her office. Well, no, she did. Wait, what was it? Her or someone in her office?
It was,
The
yeah, it
joke.
was somebody in the office, and they also defended um Maddie Mogen's dad as well.
Yes. If they never got that tip from the FBI, I wonder if they would have looked into Bryan at all when they finally got to the tips about his car. That's a great question, Harlot. That's a great question. And see, I don't know. All I can tell you is the arguments that they've made, right? Which we all know because we've been reading it together and listening. But I think it sped it up.
No, Jahari, I don't think it is controversial. I actually went back over the weekend and I started reading the initial filings at the end of 2022, which is whenever they were, arresting Bryan at the beginning of 2023. And one of the filings like this was brought up early on and presented, and they didn't see that there was like a conflict there. Because I don't think that Anne was engaging with them one on one, as it was somebody within her office, and she was like the lead, like somebody else represented them. And also, you have to think too in small towns, guys. Just think about this. Like you, you may just know like there may be crossover like that somewhere. I mean, you can't prevent it. Somebody's gonna need a defense attorney. Somebody's gonna need, that you may be related somehow, that I don't know. You're on the other side of it, on is your family's a victim. It's a little odd, but the more I kind of looked into it, I don't think it's that odd.
Mm-hmm. Which one sprinkled on it? I'd have to see it, hon.
Which one?
I'm not sure. The new mugshot, she said?
About the one when he moved to Ada? It's the one where he has more of the beard. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Definitely harlot. Definitely. So this is the state's motion in limine regarding the improper death penalty comments. And it says, come now, the state of Idaho, by and through Leda County, respectfully moves the court for an order in limine prohibiting the defense from making any reference to the state, quote, attempting to kill their client, Bryan Kohberger. The state brings this motion based on defense counsel's repeated references to the state attempting to kill their client. On October 26, 2023, Kohberger, in his reply to state's objection to defendant's second motion to dismiss indictment, on page 18, he states, quote, the state has decided to attempt to kill Mr. Kohberger. On October 26, 2023, during oral argument on the defendant's motion to dismiss the indictment, defense counsel stated, quote, this does not rise to what we would expect our government to do in this scenario, where they are trying to kill one of us, end quote, which absolutely that's not appropriate. So it says, again, on January 25th, 2024, during oral arguments on the defendant's motion to reconsider, defense counsel stated, quote, particularly in a case where the state's decided that it wants to try to kill someone, end quote. It is highly inappropriate, okay? Pursuant to 18-4004A, the state has filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. Upon a finding of guilt, the state intends to provide statutory aggravating factors which could enable a jury to impose the death penalty. This is the process laid out by Idaho law. Any other characterization, such as the statements that the state is attempting to kill, only serves to inflame the passions of the jury 100%. The statements are irrelevant, i.e., does not make a fact more or less probable, has no consequence in determining the action to the issues before the jury, the guilt or the innocence of Kohberger on the charged offenses. In addition, such statements carry the substantial danger of confusing the issues and misleading the jury, thus failing the IRE balancing test, even if deemed relevant. This is further supported by the Idaho criminal jury instructions, which instructs the jury at the conclusion of the trial, you will decide whether the state has proved the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Do not concern yourself with the subject of penalty or punishment. That subject must not in any way affect your verdict. So for the reasons above, the state requests the court prohibit defense counsel from making any reference to the state, quote, attempting to kill. I 100% agree with that, and I'm so happy that they included the jury instructions, because I think that this is really important, and us as outsiders, we do kind of like jump forward a bit and look at it like death penalty. But the fact is, the juries they're there to determine whether or not they are guilty or not guilty. Did the state meet their burden proving their guilt? Okay? Take punishment and penalty later. Step 1. We can't get to step 2 without it. And for defense to be making it like, and especially using those words in a quadruple homicide, I understand it's potential death penalty if convicted, if found guilty.
Right.
But do we use that terminology for everyone else? They're trying to kill Wade Wilson. Did we hear that? No, right? So I think that she's very clever with her choice of words, and she is absolutely doing that for the impact.
And now it's got a motion to eliminate.
I'd have to see it sprinkled donut. I think it. I think this absolutely should not be allowed to continue to happen.
I agree.
Death penalty.
And next is family members in courtroom.
Okay.
We are getting through these.
I know. I'm not gonna be able to go too much longer tonight because this time thing's throwing me off and I have to get up early. But let me.
I don't think their stuff has been quite as long as the defenses, to be honest with you, because I did kind of open up and like the top and just read like how many pages on a few of them. But maybe next time we can go through that one that I mentioned I was interested in, the I think it's the authentication of records, because
Yeah.
you and I might want to like speculate a little bit more with that on the map.
Absolutely.
So that could we could take that off the docket.
Immediate.
All right. Can we read this one?
No, we didn't read this one.
Would you like for me to read it?
Oh, yeah. It's your turn.
Okay. State's motion in limine regarding the immediate family members in the courtroom comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, and respectfully removes the court in limine for the following: 1, guidance from the court regarding who the court recognizes as immediate families under Idaho code and state v. Payne, which is they list, and then 2, an order allowing those immediate family members to remain in the courtroom for the entirety of the trial currently scheduled to begin on August 11th, 2025. I actually am just going to pause and say I think they're good. It's good that they're doing this, because didn't they have this issue in the Daybell Vallow trial?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I remember them, like, there were certain family members that wanted to be in there, and based on what they considered immediate family, like certain people may not have been eligible. Okay, so the state is requesting an order pursuant to Idaho Constitution, Article 1 and Idaho Code, and 3, allowing the immediate family members of the homicide victims to be present during the entire trial, regardless of when they are scheduled to testify. The Idaho Constitution, Article 1 states, quote, a crime victim as defined by statute has the following rights: 4, to be present at all criminal justice proceedings, unquote. B states each victim of a criminal or juvenile offense shall be permitted to be present at all criminal justice proceedings. The statute extends the right equally to the immediate families of homicide victims. The legislator did not define immediate families in this section. See? Okay, that's what I was saying. So nonetheless, the legislator has defined it elsewhere. For instance, in Idaho code, immediate family member means a parent, mother-in-law, father-in-law, husband, wife, sister, brother, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, or a son or daughter. Likewise, in Idaho code, immediate family members means the spouse, children, brother, sister, mother, or father. Okay. Interesting. So Black's Law Dictionary defines immediate family member as 1, a person's parents, spouse, children, and siblings; 2, a person's parents, spouse, children, and siblings, as well as those of the persons above. So what they're showing is that there's different codes that define immediate family member differently, and they're trying to define that now. So the state has attached a list of the immediate family members the state believes should be considered victims by statute and therefore should be allowed to be present if they choose. Yeah, this is exactly what I was meaning. That I remember this was part of what was the issue of the De Belvallo trial was. Okay, so if so, they should be allowed to be present if they choose during the entire trial, regardless of whether or when they testify. The state respectfully moves for an order in limine specifying immediate families under the Idaho Code State v. Payne and allowing those immediate family members. So the State v. Payne one was the first example, guys, and that was the one that like included step parents, in-law. I think it was a little bit more elaborative. Okay, so there is a list of those, but I believe they have been redacted, and I saw that filed somewhere. So we
have a pretty good idea of who they're referring to, because it's
Right.
not just even about whether they're going to be allowed to be there for the entirety of the trial, whether or not they're called as a witness, because usually if you're being called as a witness, you're not supposed to be attending trial prior. That's why I believe they called Al Stout as witness number 1 in the case against Letitia, so he could then sit and he would be called as a later witness again. But I don't know if that was a factor, but usually a witness can't be hearing the proceedings unless they're expert.
So actually, if you bring up that redacted list, because it answers your question on that order. I just popped it up. Sorry, I'm excited. Solved it.
Which one? What are you talking about?
Okay, so it says redacted exhibit S1 to station's motion in limine regarding immediate family members in the courtroom.
Yeah.
So if you pull that up,
I have it.
It shows, it's a 1-pager and it shows the victims.
Oh, no. Okay, I don't have it. Hold on. Oh, the exhibit. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, pull that one because that answers your question.
Okay. So for Ethan, we have the triplets, brother and sister, then father and mother. Kaylee, we have sister, mom, dad, brother, grandmother, and grandmother. Xana, we have her mother, sister, and father. Maddie, we have grandmother, stepmother. Oh, so maybe this is regarding Maddie then.
Yeah, because I remember when I read through the original no contact order under Maddie, it was her father, her mother, and her stepmother, or her stepfather. There was those 3 that were listed, I remember.
Okay, that would make more sense. Okay, so grandmom, stepmom, stepsister, mother, stepfather, and father.
Great. So that it definitely answers it.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So, but maybe because he's looking at the documents. Maybe Ben Mogen is, and he looked at his no contact order and he reached out and said, "Hey, I'd like to extend this."
Well, maybe because they're just preparing for trial too, wanting just to make sure all their bases are covered.
Right.
Interesting.
But I didn't even realize she had a stepsister.
No, I didn't either.
I wonder if that's a new marriage. That's interesting. And I hope people don't go look in and try to find out who she is. Give them their privacy.
No. They deserve their privacy. Advance records. Okay, so this is state's motion in limine regarding the AT&T timing advance records. An order in limine prohibiting the defense from making any reference to the absence of AT&T timing advance records for Bryan Kohberger. The state brings this motion based on defense's counsel's repeated references to the alleged existence of AT&T timing advance records related to Kohberger's cell phone. See the defendant's supplemental response for expert witnesses. The state has been advised and will offer documentation and or testimony that AT&T records are produced by their Global Legal Demand Center, and AT&T GLDC did not begin producing timing advance records until May 2023. All records for Kohberger's phone were obtained from GLDC in December 2022. The state intends to supplement this motion with additional information from the FBI and or AT&T prior the hearing on this motion on April 9th, 2025. Any statements or inferences by defense counsel or their witnesses that there is additional evidence that could have been provided or was not provided is a mischaracterization of the evidence and should not be allowed. Under IRE 403, any probative value of such evidence is outweighed by the danger of misleading the jury, undue delay, and waste of time. For these reasons, the state requests the court issue an order in limine prohibiting the defense from making any reference to the absence of AT&T timing advance records for Bryan Kohberger. That makes sense, and I feel like we heard Anne argue this a lot, that she's asking for things that do not exist, and if that advanced record didn't even exist till almost a year after, then it just doesn't exist yet.
Maybe is that okay?
What?
I wouldn't I got a little distracted because I wanted to answer Jahara in
Harris?
chat. Yes. So she asked, can Brian's family be in the courtroom? What is the decorum? Absolutely, they can be in the
Absolutely, yeah.
courtroom. The reason why that motion to eliminate was filed is because on that list that we went over of the victims' families, there's a potential that some of them could be called as witnesses. So because they are what is now immediate family members, they don't want to exclude them from getting to watch the court proceeding, because most witnesses, unless you're certain experts or you're the lead detective on the case, you don't get to watch what's going on in front of you. So until like you testify. So it is natural for them to do that. And Brian's family, I'm sure, will have like a select number of seats, for them to offer, and then they'll have the same for the victims' families, and then for the public and media will then go after that. But of course, the defendants and the victims' families take precedence.
Hi, Kevin. Jahara says,
And
thank you for answering.
and I hope they're there to support him. I really feel for Brian's family.
Absolutely. Hey, Pointer Lover. Absolutely. He deserves a support system too.
You have to say hi to Kevin.
I did.
Okay.
Don't make me do it twice, Shay. Come on. That was hard enough. As of now, yes, for Shiggles, which I'm so happy about because I'm all for transparency. So as of now, yes. Thank goodness. Because it was hard enough, even with like Lori Daybell. I was so disappointed, even though it was happening at the same time that Letitia's was. So it was impossible to keep up with both. But we only got audio at the end of the day, and it's just not the same. I'm a visual person. And so cameras in that courtroom are a go as of now. And I really hope they don't switch that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was such a disadvantage, one in the Daybell one because of the visual aspect, right? But more importantly, recently, like Delphi, Melissa, it's left so much more chaos and people feeling confident in the jury's decision and their deliberation of who's been convicted for the deaths of Libby and Abby. So I think that, having like in tech, as technology advances, like not everybody can pile into a courtroom like the way the law initially was like set and written.
Right.
So I think having the ability, at least if we could watch it, I would be okay if it was delayed, Melissa.
I don't
wouldn't
mind
even have to be
delayed.
relayed.
Just let us have the transparency. I don't care if it's stream like recorded and then released at the end of each day, or just let us have that transparency and see it for ourselves.
Agree. The delay's not so bad too. Like, I mean, I don't.
Yeah. Right. Exactly, Harla. Exactly. I think it should be a fixed feed in every courtroom, and then you give access to the networks you want to give access to.
Yeah, I think more courtrooms need to update their technology to put that in place so it's not an issue. Because I agree, there's a way you could position those cameras that's not going to feel prejudicial to the defendant and the public eye.
Correct, because we even dealt with Kohberger up there, zooming in on Kohberger, don't zoom in on the defense, and then the jurors many times accidentally get filmed, and just have a fixed camera and mic in every fucking room, and then you give out the feed to whoever you want to give it out to.
I think Court TVs, for the most part, specifically reigns as like the normal one that does the feed to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, we have defendant's motion for leave to file additional motions challenging the death penalty. This is you.
Okay. Sorry, I was like, which one? Comes now, Bryan C. Kohberger, and through his attorneys of record, and hereby moves the court for leave from the court sealed order governing further criminal proceedings and notice of trial setting filed October 9th, 2024. Defense counsel is asking for leave to file the 2 additional motions challenging the death penalty, which we went over on our last part of this series. So good cause exists for these motions to be filed and heard, which we've gone over the autism one. Should the court require hearing on this matter, counsel request a hearing to present oral argument, evidence, and testimony. And I think what we saw, I think it was filed the night on the last part of the series Friday that we went over, Melissa. They did file another one, but it's pretty lengthy.
Okay.
So that's that second one that we were waiting for as described in this one. I like to keep track of them. I'm really interested in what comes in. I mean, I always look at it like this could be, you could easily be in the defendant's place, whether you think somebody is wrongfully a suspect or not, and then you could always be a victim or a family member of a victim. I like to see the law proceed just, and just and fair. This.
Oh, okay. So wait, these are the text messages. Oh, okay. These are the ones we went through already.
Yeah, the self-authentication records, that's the one that has the list of what they're going to admit as hearsay for different records, financial stuff, videos. And with that's what I was saying, like they point out specific dates and people, Melissa. So we may want to kind of like look into these further.
Okay. All right, this is probably going to be the last one I'm going to do, though, for tonight, but let's see what it has. Okay. This is just a lot, I kind of feel like we need to compartmentalize, and when I say that, I mean kind of go through the IgG and the DNA stuff on its own. Go through the alibi stuff and like everything, not that we have much with that, on its own. Go through like just every single piece, because there's so many moving pieces to this, and it's overwhelming when you have it all at once. I feel like we have to, it would be part 6, bum cigarette, part 6. That is when we went through the defense's motions in Limine. So if you go back 2 episodes, and they're all in the case against Bryan Kohberger playlist in order.
Melissa, I agree with you. I think it would be good to compartmentalize these topics, but I also I'm not opposed to how we've been trying to at least catch up in the motions.
Oh no, absolutely.
Well.
I mean, after we go through, because I know how many episodes we're doing.
Right.
So to do like a specific, all right, on this now, like once we're up to date with the docket, let's discuss like everything we have and try to get a real good understanding, because I feel like that's where a lot of the issues are caused, including myself, right? Is when we don't have a genuine understanding of what we're ingesting, and nor should we, like majority of us are laymen, right? We're not familiar with not only the court process, but DNA and IgG, right? We could get a general idea of it, but to actually go in it and try to truly understand, all right, what are they laying out? How unusual is it that there was blood on this railing, right? And not look, well, we could look into it by looking at other protocols, looking at other cases, like what to expect, like how unusual is it to see things in this case that some of us may find unusual compared to, is it unusual, like just kind of take things piece by piece and then kind of come together at the end and put it all together, and what do you have left that we could all agree on?
I like that. I also like how how the motion eliminate for the state for the alibi had listed out all the, court documents to hearings that those things were discussed. I'd like to kind of sprinkle that in as well if you're interested, because there are things that I'm realizing that I heard a year or two ago in a hearing, but it's not, it's there, but I want to connect it all. I want to see what it looks like
Absolutely.
now.
Yes. And even like you mentioned, you watched the 23rd hearing again, which I wanted to do. But how, now that we have more context, going back and listening, we're going to pick up on things that, hey, we didn't even know to pick up on because we didn't have the information that we have now.
Yep. I didn't get so far into it, so I can hold off, but I wanted to hear.
You don't have to hold off. I'm saying it's really a smart idea.
Well, Harlot and I were talking about the some of the way Anne had described. Remember when we went over the defense's motion with the King, the 1112 King Road, the pictures of like when they identified the car.
Yes.
So in that hearing on the 23rd, the way like Anne is discussing some of that in her argument has led some people to think that, did she have an admission that Bryan was there the next morning, for one? And then also she mentioned like, is she trying to say that because the Ridge Road camera was apparently the one that Balance used,
right.
like was there also an admission that he was on that camera? Like, so I really want to go back through that hearing because there's so much more outside of that.
Only specific cameras that you couldn't make out the clear. So she was inadvertently admitting to certain ones, like, but
Right.
not all.
I'm glad you remember that, because like now after reading these documents, I'm thinking of some of the stuff she was saying and I'm like, wait, what did she say? And why is this happening now?
Yep. Absolutely. It's like, I'm just so excited to continue going through all of this and to, I don't know, like it's been years in the making. We started here over 2 years ago trying, like I remember it was the night my niece was born, trying to go through the fucking house and figuring out which one was the ground floor. Little did we realize both were the ground floor. But I'll never forget hours. And I'm not someone who really does research on my live, but we sat here like, what the fuck, like with Zillow, trying to figure it out, going by windows, this, that, and to know that here we are. And I don't know how more people aren't completely hyped about this, even though I see some people trying to jump on just to jump on the next thing. But it is so, I don't know what emotion or word to use to describe it, but it's exhilarating in a way. And I don't mean to use that to be insensitive, versus to get some of the answers, at least for me, it's like this boost of adrenaline of like, oh my God, like I've been thinking about this for years, and theorizing and seeing, well, what is the answer? I don't know. That's what kind of drives me in true crime, is trying to figure out that mystery. And it's so, like we're only getting a little bit, and you have to try to figure it out. And I don't know, like, and I like that it's not all one side. I like that it's a bit controversial, and I love a good fight, and every defendant deserves the best fight that they could get. And I like going into this knowing that, hey, the truth is going to be the truth. Both sides are coming, and they're coming strong, and they're not backing down. And so we get to watch as the evidence take the spotlight.
Right. No, I agree with you. I admit, like, my little guilty pleasure at night. You're gonna laugh at me. Because of so much has come out with these like court hearings and all these documents, guys. I have gone and pulled out the vault of what happened before Kohberger was, um, the person that was arrested. And I was looking at stuff, not so trying to go down the rabbit hole of like social media connections to the
Mhm.
victims, but his possible social media presence after the crimes are committed. And that could lead you down like the popular ones of people alleging Kohberger could be, Papa Roger, could be the 4chan, could be
Oh my
outside
God.
looking on
Jack.
Reddit.
Yeah.
I have gone like I have been down like looking at some of them just to like kind of just prove it to myself,
Right.
because I'm curious and I don't know if we'll really get some of these answers without that kind of clear, concise, thing.
Well, and I'd love to get people on who are leaning more towards innocent like we used to do. And now that we have more information and kind of like, all right, touch base, because I like having the debates respectfully, because that's when you kind of get to the meat and potatoes of it, is when you have people who see things differently and you have to kind of like, I don't know what word to use, but like you have to talk it out, debate it out for the true point to come to light. And sometimes it's on your side, sometimes it's on the other person's side, but it's only when you have those conversations that you could kind of get to it.
Agree.
Because when you think about this, it's going to be 12 jurors, okay? So nobody's going to think like you think. You have to come together and realize there are people who are going to see things completely differently. And that's why I enjoy having those conversations, because it gives you insight into how someone else thinks compared to how you may interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
we'll hear it at trial. They're not releasing that 911 call, though, prior.
I was going to
Einenberg
ask you
was
if
a liar, and we proved that over 2 years ago. Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to ask me?
No, I was actually going to ask you if you saw Amber's comment because I was curious if you thought they were going to play it at trial too.
Oh, they'll play it at trial 100% in my opinion. Absolutely, they'll play it at trial. We will not hear any of it prior to trial, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, you want to get through this last one? I know you're probably
Yes.
ready to go.
Okay, so we have the state's motion in limine, which, Amber, when you coming back? Sorry. Now that you mentioned it, when you coming back, Amber? Because Amber also covered Idaho too. And I know I'm being selfish and you're doing everything you need to be doing, but miss you. Can't wait till you're back.
I saw her share. Remember, she did her documentary on
Yeah.
this, and I saw her share it. I was like, "Where are you? Like, we need your thoughts."
She has done amazing documentary. I'll still say hands down, like she has one of the best Watts documentary, like for real. And it takes a lot. I give her a hats off because I can't do pre-records like that, let alone put together a whole damn documentary.
She's probably putting together another one and is going to surprise
Hopefully,
us.
yeah, you should work on that like in your own time, like kind of like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, because before you know it, you have a whole damn thing together of like the Idaho information.
Yeah, she's got a good calming voice for one too. I'm like,
She does.
I'm totally following it.
Opposite. Yeah, opposite of what you get here. Ah! They're not my wax melts, Pity Mama. They're Nays, and Nightbot drops the link like every 10 minutes. But here you go. Here's Nightbot. And you know what, Sprinkle Donut? For a gag order this whole time, the only thing I'm surprised about is how much has come out in a week. That's what I feel like. Like not that it had to start coming out. And I love this judge. I love Judge Hippler. I think he's no nonsense. And what we're seeing, and we got light of this in the January 23rd court hearing, he is trying to figure this shit out before trial starts. Because what we're not going to do is bring the families, bring Kohberger, bring these the jurors into this courtroom, and then ask them for months. I don't know if the jury is going to be sequestered. I think they might be sequestered.
Really?
But yeah, because this is such a high profile, long case, the trial. Like, I don't know how, unless they're really going to trust jurors to not watch anything or talk about this for how long the trial is going to be. I see many issues coming about, but They're not going to bring them in here. And then, hey, we're going to argue all of this because they have to have the jury. They have to dismiss the jury every time they kind of have these arguments. He's like, we're not doing that come trial. I want this shit figured out now. So when trial comes, we get our shit done.
Delphi was sequestered.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
Oh, absolutely. I haven't, listen, even though it's very obvious that I'm leaning towards guilt, I really am not 100%. Nobody should be 100%, period. Like, really, that's dangerous. It's very dangerous, and I get very nervous when I see people 100% anyway.
If it wasn't the single source DNA and there hasn't been another reason as to why his DNA would be there brought by the defense, I would be more in the middle.
And
that's where I lie.
Alibi and the phone disconnecting from the network and
those things are
reconnecting
big.
and everything collectively so far. But guess what? If they come at a trial and they happen to spit shit at me that, hey, it works out perfectly. Okay, then it works out perfectly.
And even in the beginning of this, I was never opposed to, there being more than one perpetrator. Yeah. So if they came out with something that they're investigating somebody else, like, I would be shocked because of how far we are, but I wouldn't be against it because that was something that I had considered before. But even if it's not something I consider, I'm just going to follow the facts.
Yeah. You could be 99% starting, but you shouldn't be 100%, because how can, realistically, like, then I think that we failed with our system because we haven't seen them put on their case yet. We haven't seen anyone put on their case. So in reality, what could we possibly be 100% about?
I mean, we don't have video of the crime being committed to see with our own eyes, and that's a different kind of evidence. Everything is circumstantial.
Yeah, even eyewitness, unless it was eyewitness to the crime itself, is circumstantial.
Even the eyewitness witnessing the crime is circumstantial, technically.
It can be, yeah.
Because that's kind of a one against the other kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But okay, this is the state's motion in limine for self-authentication of records in reliance on IRE. So they're moving for orders in limine, allowing the admission of certain evidence in accordance to Idaho rule. So it's the exceptions to the rule against hearsay, regardless of whether the declarant is available as a witness. So records of a regularly conducted activity, a record of an act, event, condition, opinion, or diagnosis if the record was made at a time or near the time of, from information transmitted by someone with knowledge. The record was kept in the course of a regularly conducted activity of a business, organization, occupation, or calling, whether or not for profit. Making the record was a regular practice of that activity. All of these conditions are shown by the testimony of the custodian or another qualified witness, or by a certification that complies with the rules. The opponent does not show that the source of information or the method or circumstances or preparation indicate a lack of trustworthiness. So the IRE 8038 states the following: public records. A record or statement of a public office, if it sets out the offices regularly record. Okay, we get it. Okay. So we have at trial, the state intends to introduce the following certified statements and or records under IRE 8036 and IRE 8038. The 1320 Linda Lane, it gave me flashbacks.
That's what I said. Like, you're going to see but you're going to be like, where's 1112?
Yeah.
And then it's not going to have 1112 King Court on here, but I'm thinking because that was around the time of the crime and different, it's going to be admitted differently. These are going to be just on the timeline.
Before now. I got it. So 1320 Linda Lane surveillance footage from the 13th. Sorry, I was looking at the date it was provided. 1330 Linda Lane surveillance footage from the 13th. Albertson. Oh, the Albertsons. Video surveillance and business records from the 13th. Remember, he was spotted at the Albertsons the next day. Amazon Financial and user records for Bryan Kohberger. AT&T phone records for Bryan Kohberger, Madison Mogen, Xana. Bagel Shop video surveillance on the 13th. Bank of America records for Bethany and Xana. Banner Bank banking records for Ethan. Cafe Artista video surveillance for the 13th. Corner Club for the 13th, the 12th through the 13th. Corner Club financial transaction receipt of sale for the 13th. Costco in Washington on the 13th. DeSale student records regarding Bryan Kohberger. Dick's Sporting Goods record of sale, Bryan Kohberger. Discover financial records for Kaylee. DoorDash records for Xana and Ethan. Early warning records. Elan financial records for Kaylee.
So the early warning ones, that one I went and tried to look at what that is, because on all of these I could connect like places we've seen in like the PCA or like specific to that person. And I was wondering, is the early warning records, because there's like a business that's like a financial thing, Melissa, but there's also what I was looking at too, what comes up is warning records when it's like weather, but also there was a search population like in specific when I looked up like Moscow, Idaho, or that area, like it could be the university's records, like the vandal, like
I assumed it was the vandal alerts.
oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering what that meant, because it's like I heard somebody say it was like a financial one, and then there was the
well,
weather.
it came the next day, like, well, the day of, you know, like, but later in
Right.
the day, so it kind of makes sense. Everything's kind of mostly on the 13th or the 12th at this point. The early warning, I would assume it's the vandal alerts, because we know they came in at starting at 1 and then again at like 4 something, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm interested in that one because that's the first time I've ever heard of early warning, you know.
I don't know if that's like what it's categorized as, maybe.
Yeah. Good point.
E&S Services, video surveillance, November 13th, 2022. Farmers Insurance surveillance video for the 13th. Floyd's Cannabis Co. surveillance video for the 13th. Forrest Stack's crypto financial records for Bryan Kohberger. Cryptocurrency, nice. Grub Truck video surveillance for the 13th. Harbor Freight business and surveillance records. Idaho Central.
Wait, look at this one. This one's different to me because this is the first time I've heard of Harbor Freight. Because everything we're seeing records for in terms of like video for like surveillance is around the 12th and 13th of the victims and then the defendants' movements. The rest seems pretty normal to me and things you'd be asking for. Financial records, phone records, but in stores, like we've heard of Amazon, but I've never heard of Harbor Freight. And
I don't know what Harbor Freight is.
So it is a, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a box store, and they sell different things from like kind of like a it's like tools, kind of like you would like a Home Depot. So, you know, things like you would be able to buy there is interesting. Like, why would that be of significance to this case? Is there things that they sell there? Could they, like, we should look like maybe keywords of like knives, gloves, things like that. Maybe they're looking into some of these places because of what they sell that could be used in commission of a crime.
Well, and it's surveillance records too.
Right, of when those purchases would be. But see, this one doesn't have a specific date because we knew the other, everything else had the date based on what they think the movements of those parties were. So this one is more broad, and I find that interesting because that's the first time I've seen Harbor Freight.
I love how everyone's describing it as a lower end. Like everyone unanimously agrees, lower end tool store. That's
What
funny.
if they got a little small handheld shop vac
Stop
from
that
there?
now.
They
Stop it.
sell them. They sell them.
Stop it. I can't.
Yes.
You know, don't do that to me this late. I can't.
Okay.
I can't. Um, okay, and so we have the Idaho Central Credit Union, the bank records for Maddie, the Indian Mountain Lake surveillance and records. I don't know what that is either. Indian Mountain Lake
So I
surveillance.
looked this up. You know where that's at?
Where?
It's in Pennsylvania in the Poconos.
Ah, look at that.
I did. That's why I
Looky,
was telling
looky.
you we got to Google these together. I know I've already kind of gone down it. But see, this is the next one that's weird to me. Why that place?
Well, Clicker's like, I love Harbor Freight.
Who doesn't love a cheap toll? I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Well, it can store photos and stuff on it. That doesn't surprise me at all that they obtained any form of an electronic that could have storage on it. So you have Joanne Fabrics. What?
See, that's the one. I was another one. So what would they sell at Joann's? Because it's not a place that is listed with the date. I didn't get that far into looking what all they sell there, but the other one was easier for me to give examples, you know?
Temu version of Home Depot. Oh my goodness.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So we have Leda County Sheriff's Office Deputy Darren Duke's body camera. We have the Leda County Sheriff's Office citation issued on August 21st.
Hold on one second. They said, is that a part number? Sorry, I don't know if you mean like when it says like AV, like that's audiovisual. It's like giving what
Yes.
it's going to be coded as in the evidence for trial.
Right.
I don't know if that's what they were asking.
I'm not sure where.
Now, when you do go into these warrants, guys, like I started going back into the original ones of like Amazon and them, they actually do list the product numbers in there.
Yeah.
So we could maybe do that at a later point, like you said, when we kind of compile stuff and we could see some of the examples of the things that they were asking them to look at. But yeah, these are just for
Yeah, these are just
exhibits.
audio-visual. Yeah. So we have Marshall's financial records for Bryan Kohberger. National Weather Service records. Ha!
There you go, girl.
Stargazing for the 12th and 13th. Numerica bank records for Kaylee. PayPal Venmo financial records. PNC bank records for Bryan Kohberger. Pentel data records. Pennsylvania State Employees Credit Union for Bryan Kohberger. Petco. Financial records for Kaylee. Rite Aid financial records. Ross financial records. Sunset Mark in Main Street, Moscow. Surveillance for the 13th. Sunset Mark surveillance for the 13th. Two different Sunset Marks, both on the 13th.
That's one in, yeah, I found that interesting too.
One in Moscow, one in Pullman. What were they looking for at Sunset Mart?
Well, I think because the way I perceived this was that this may have been along the path that they described in the PCA.
Yeah, maybe.
That's where I wanted to kind of like just go ahead and add it maybe to a Google map, and we could pre-do that before we do it live, so it doesn't take too much time.
Definitely. And thank you, Rebecca, for the super sticker. Thank you. Okay. We have Target financial records, TikTok user records for Xana, TJX financial records for Dylan.
And that's part of TJ Maxx Marshalls, like that's their credit card.
Oh, okay. T-Mobile phone records for Kaylee and Dylan. Umpqua bank records for Dylan. Under Armour transaction records for Bryan Kohberger.
You know what they sell there? Those baklavas. Under Armour has baklavas.
They sure do. U.S. Chef Store.
Or balaclava. Did I say it wrong? I said it. Sorry, guys. I was talking about the dessert on accident when I said that. I meant the freaking mess. Melissa, can I ask you this real quick? Sorry. when you're seeing these, I don't know. So when you saw like TJ Maxx, right,
Mhm.
for Dylan, and then you see that they asked for Marshalls, which is part of the TJ Maxx brand, for Bryan. Do you, so maybe he had receipts or something. We've heard some kind of rumors of that, right? Maybe they checked to see what he bought there, but do you think that this was my mindset. Like, do you think that they looked at if there were, when they pulled financial records, but just say financial records alone, that they looked for any like cross identifications between the surviving victims, the deceased victims, and Bryan, and then maybe started pulling stuff to see if there's connections there? Because that's what I was wondering when I saw Dylan's. Like, why would you need Dylan's
Right.
TJX financial records? So, like, that's what I was thinking, that maybe that did how, like, could there be a connection? Were they trying to find a connection between Bryan and one of the victims? Like buying something at the store, did they come
Right.
across each other?
I
Like, does that make sense? In my mind,
no,
that's what
it
I was
does.
wondering.
It does. I have to think on it a little bit more.
Okay.
Like because I saw repeated searches. I just didn't want to jump to conclusions. Um,
Sorry, I did.
no, you're fine. I just don't know what my opinion of it is yet.
I go feet first sometimes. You gotta like reel me back in.
No, you're fine. Hi, Johnny. No, that's not what they're looking for. I mean, when they're pulling up records, they're looking for anything. Let me be clear. Like if they saw something alerting like that and it led to that, but like that's not what I'm anticipating this be for. So we have the Under Armour, we have the US Chef Store, Ulta financial records, Verizon phone records for Ethan, Bethany. Oh, and Jack.
Because remember, they were
Yeah.
calling Jacks, so they're
Yeah.
probably they probably, whenever they did this, they could you
Yeah.
know what, I think they're preemptively right now probably about to confirm Jack not being a suspect in this. This is what I think too, because they're gonna want to get ahead
No,
of
well, they
that.
already. Oh, well, it's provided on that. Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah.
I
Well,
think they're
and
doing it to get ahead of it.
going through the victims, it's gonna. They're gonna need his end too. It makes sense.
And and I have a feeling he may be a witness at trial, and maybe he'll read
Yeah.
out his text messages and what he received and say
Yep.
what was going on during that time, and he was
Yeah.
allegedly asleep.
Absolutely.
And
We
they can
have.
easily see
Mhm.
that because they'll show the phone didn't have activity at all.
Yeah. And nor do I think that that would even be presented because again, that's what they're establishing now. Um, I mean, they can open the door for a reasonable doubt, but they're not going to be able to do it through because he's not on the stand. Like he's on the literal stand, but he's not. It's not a trial against him, so he won't need to be producing his records.
No, but I think they're possibly for the timeline of the girls maybe falling asleep, because he was the recipient of the calls and the messages. They may introduce that evidence through him.
Yes. Oh, they'll introduce absolutely through that, but I'm saying like it's not like he'll have to sit there and prove, hey, I was asleep during the time. Like it'll come out naturally, but if Anne was trying to like do it, like that's what I meant. Like it's not.
Oh yeah. Well,
He's not at trial.
I think this state is setting up through several parts of motions eliminate to avoid that, like you
Yeah.
said. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have Walmart surveillance and financial transaction records for Bryan Kohberger, Washington Department of Motor Vehicle surveillance, haha, for when he got the license plate changed. Okay, for
Mm-hmm.
November 18th. Washington Department of Motor Vehicles registration documents for Bryan Kohberger, Washington Trust Bank records for Kohberger, Wells Fargo Bank records for Madison Mogen, Winco financial records for Bryan Kohberger, Winco financial records and video surveillance for Bethany and Dylan, Kaylee, Maddie, and or Xana, Washington State University video surveillance for the 13th, and WSU parking records.
So the one that I was most interested in that I texted you about was the Winco ones. I thought that one was interesting because that's for all victims, surviving and deceased, minus Ethan, and then Bryan. And
Mhm.
then I looked up like where the Winco was, and the Winco was right next, like the street right next to Winco was the same street Bryan was pulled over on August 21st by Moscow PD.
Right.
And I find that interesting.
It is interesting.
I don't know if there may be no connection there, but it's interesting.
It is interesting because it includes them all too.
Mm-hmm. Winco is like a like a big chain food supply store, like supermarket.
Right. And
Like a
hello,
Walmart.
Isabella. So it says the state relies on IRE 80324 in the alternative, which states as follows. Other exceptions, in general, a statement not specifically covered by any of the foregoing exceptions if the statement has equivalent circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness, it is offered as evidence of a material fact, it is more probative on the point for which it is offered than any other evidence than the proponent can obtain through reasonable efforts, and admitting it will best serve the purposes of these rules and interests of justice. B, notice the statement is admissible only if, before the trial or hearing, the proponent gives an adverse party reasonable notice of the intent to offer the statement and its particulars, including the declarant's name and address, so that the party has a fair opportunity to meet it. IRE 902.4 and 11 provide for self-authentication of these records as follows. Certified copies of public record, the custodian or another person authorized to make the certification, a certificate that complies with Rule 902.1, 2, or 3, and IRE 902.11 states certified domestic records of a regularly conducted activity. The state intends to obtain certifications of the above listed items prior to the April 21st, 2025 exhibit deadline. This filing, damn, they're getting close. This filing hereby provides notice of state's intent to introduce and rely on certain evidence as required under IRE 803.6 and 8 and IRE 902.4 and 11 and or IRE 803.24, and the state respectfully moves for orders in limine admitting these records as self-authenticated and or exceptions to the hearsay rule. Ooh, I'm going to have to go over that list and kind of like look over it again and put some thoughts together in it.
Well, I think there's even more to the list, like, you know, whether it's just looking at it by location and trying to connect it to one, if it was ever mentioned the probable cause, two, if we've ever seen warrants issued. There's so much. That's why I was like, I think this is a bigger conversation if you wanted to go that route.
And I want to go that route. Like I said, compartmentalize.
I agree with you completely, because that's when my brain started to explode and I was like, I can't do this right now.
Some are going to be extremely relevant. Others are going to not be like as much as we're thinking into it, you know, like, but all of it's going to serve its purpose.
Well, this stuff right here is being asked to be admitted for that evidence. We got to remember that there's so much discovery that's never shown at trial. So there's probably stuff that, like, you know, that's even still sealed that we don't know yet. And I'm really curious.
Absolutely. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there is so much evidence in this case. And that's whether you want to argue it's all of it's relevant, not all relevant, you know, like some relevant. It's still an abundant amount of information and data they have to go through.
Yeah. I don't see how it would be possible to take the if you waived your right to a speedy trial to, like, I feel like that would be necessary to get through all the evidence. It's almost like a double-edged sword. You'd have to waive your right, because this is insane at the amount of data.
Well, do you think if the state offered a plea that Kohberger would take it?
Based on my perception of him, and this is just going on my own perception, I am not a doctor or anything in this field of psychiatry, but my perception of the way he's kind of handled himself from what I've whether it's hearsay, from the interaction he had with that lawyer in Pennsylvania to being extradited, etc. I kind of think that he would decline it. I really think that he would fight it. And I don't know if that's just me. I feel like he's a little bit, he may be a cocky guy. That's just me. But do I think that they would offer a plea at this point? I don't. And you didn't ask me that, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it.
Yeah, I don't think that they are ever going to offer it. And happy 24th to your son, some golf girl. But part of me, because I never thought that they were going to take a plea if it was offered. But part of me is looking at Anne. It's getting more realistic. Not saying that through Anne's eyes, she always knew, but moving with the judges, and now things are coming out and she's getting boom, boom, boom. It seems like, that was flying for a while. It's not flying anymore. I think she may, if the opportunity came up, like I'm trying to imagine, is she trying to make all these issues in hopes that they may offer a plea, and then she would advise him. Now, whether or not he'd take it is a whole nother debate. But I'm trying to think, with how it's going, would she suggest that he did?
Okay, so if a plea is offered, then okay, say the plea is offered and it's it's like taking the death penalty off the table and it's just life,
Right.
it's sentenced to life without parole, then basically he doesn't really have an appeal through this, right? He's like, it's like one and done. I think that he would refute the plea and be advised, because then, at least if convicted, then he'd have a chance to appeal, and or as some of these issues that Anne doesn't have case law backing, like the IGG stuff, and she's talking more about it being like a public kind of disservice to privacy and things that need to be litigated further at some point. If they put some place in some laws that could change the way that the trajectory went like this, then she's at least got a record that he could bring forward in an appellate process, of saying, we raised all these things. So I think at this point, he's better off fighting it. Do you agree?
I think he's better off fighting it from the tide of public perception of it. Yeah. And that's shocking.
Well, I think, and I believe that he is autistic. Now, stating like when he was diagnosed to that, like whether they knew about it in childhood or finding out later, it never changed the fact that he was autistic. But that doesn't also preclude him from being capable of committing a crime. It comes down, I believe, more into the intelligence and knowing the difference between right or wrong. So I think that if they go that route and the judge hears from the experts, then he'll have to make a decision based on that. And there's certain factors that go with that. Melissa, did you ever think that maybe that besides the autism, that through those the psych evals, that maybe he may have other like other mental disorders or something that we're just not aware of, that could be the reason why Anne wants those terms like psychopath and sociopath taken out of being used in trial?
I thought about it. But I think that you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to bring an evaluation and use ASD diagnosis, you can't also cherry pick what you don't want shown within a diagnosis.
Yeah. I just wondered that perhaps like what if he has more than autism? That could be why that she asked those two words be removed. I was really kind of stuck on that. It was been on
Right.
my mind since we read over those. I really didn't like the murder one, obviously. You know, it's like you're literally at a murder trial, but those two were just kind of like, why did she file those?
I hope those are not mini penises floating around in my bubbles. That's so funny because every time I use this background, people tell me they see things in these bubbles all the time. And I don't know anything to be in the bubbles, but you can make it what you'd like to be. But many penises was the first time I've heard that.
I mean, it would be a double-sided, you know what?
Yeah,
If
a
anything.
double-sided, you know. But that's so funny because I've seen the faces. People say they say faces. People say they see faces. And so once I started looking at that, I saw faces. Now I see a double-sided penis. So thank you very much. Now I
It
won't
looked
ever not be able to see it. Uncircumcised. You stop it. Jesus. Okay. Oh, wow. All right. Well, I guess the next episode we'll go through what we got left on the docket. And what was that main one? Which one did you say you wanted?
well, I think we need to go through the other motion for the death penalty. That was a bigger one.
Yeah.
But the one I said I was really interested in, we just went over, and I think, like you said, you need some time to kind of marinate on
Yeah.
it. And I agree. Like, I'm still marinating on it.
I need time to marinate on all of it. That's why I
Right.
said I got to start to compartmentalize because it's too overwhelming for me. It's too much information in a short period of time after having none. And I kind of have to take it piece by piece for my brain to absorb it.
Well, it was like the fire hydrant, like, was just like busted, and
Busted
here's
open. Yeah.
every, and I'm like, and for, I do follow this case really well outside of here too, that are outside of like just like, live discussions, but um I, even feeling like I know a lot about it, I felt very overwhelmed. I could imagine for somebody coming in new to like Melissa try to
Oh, yeah.
jump in there. So I think you've done a good job of getting people interested and like take it, like, join us for the ride. This is a very interesting case. It's definitely one of the decade.
It is, and I already know when trial happens, this is going to be everywhere. That's when everyone's going to hop on it. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, shit, what's this? What? And have a bunch of questions. So at least I was hoping for our community to be like, up, we've been following, so we know what the fuck is up. And come trial, so you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about being so far behind. It's
Thank
overwhelming.
It is. Well, I want to thank you for having me up, and I'm gonna
Thank you.
jump down so I can eat some dinner.
Yes, and we'll let you guys know which day this upcoming week that we're going to be doing our next episode. But thank you all so much for being here. We have members only Monday tomorrow, followed by a Patreon live. So I will see you guys all then. Have an amazing night and good luck adjusting to our daylight savings time. Good night.